All right, good evening, everybody. It is 6:01. This is the June 11th regular board meeting for the Town of Spencer Board of Aldermen. And so with that, we will call the meeting to order. We have everyone here this evening, except for Mr. Muhammad, but he will be here. He's a little bit delayed, so he'll be here when he's able to get here from work. So with that, we will begin with an invocation, and Mr. Miller, what was yours?
Thank you. Will you please bow your head? Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support. As we begin this meeting, help us engage in meaningful discussion, allowing us to grow closer as a group and support the bonds of our community. We ask it in your name. Amen.
Amen. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Board, you have before you your agenda for this evening, and are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? And if there are not, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
Make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Okay. Motion to adopt from Ms. Moody, second from Ms. Sledge. All in favor? All right. All opposed? And that is approved. So our agenda is set, and we will begin with two recognitions this evening. We have two very important days in June that are being recognized this month, and so I'm going to start with a proclamation for the 80th anniversary of D-Day for World War II. Whereas on June 6, 1944, scores of Allied service members prepared to fight a battle that would decide the fate of freedom in the 20th century, and on D-Day, American, British, and Canadian forces advanced through thickets of barbed wire and scaled heavily protected cliffs. They braved gales of bullets and artillery fire, taking heavy losses as they cut through Nazi defenses. Thousands gave their last full measure of devotion. And whereas victory on D-Day dealt a significant blow to an ideology fueled by hatred and allowed America and its allies to secure a foothold in France, open a path to Berlin, and liberate a continent from the grip of tyranny, and whereas victory on D-Day made possible the achievements that followed and the end of World War II, the Marshall Plan, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, and the shared prosperity and security that flowed from each. And whereas today, as we carry on the struggle for liberty and universal human rights, let us draw strength from a moment when free nations beat back the forces of oppression and gave new hope to the world. Now, therefore, I, Jonathan D. Williams, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the town of Spencer, and on behalf of the entire Board of Aldermen and all our citizens, do hereby proclaim June 6, 2024, as a national day of remembrance of the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Be it further proclaimed that we call upon the citizens of the town of Spencer to observe this day with programs, ceremonies, and activities that honor those who fought and died, so men and women who fought and died, so men and women might know what it is to be free. In witness whereof, I have ordered the town seal affixed by my signature on this 6th day of June in the year of our Lord, 2024. And the second is a proclamation in honor of Juneteenth Day for 2024. Whereas on September 22nd, 1862, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation declaring that as of January 1st, 1863, all enslaved people in the rebellious states would be thenceforward and forever free. And whereas it took almost 3 more years of conflict and loss to bring about the end of the Civil War and the ratification of the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution in December 1865 to officially end slavery in the United States. And whereas on June 19, 1865, 2 months after the official surrender of the Confederacy at Appomattox, Union soldiers arrived in Galveston, Texas, and issued General Order No. 3 announcing freedom to some of the last enslaved people in the United States. And whereas June 19th, or Juneteenth, is nationally recognized as National Freedom Day, the oldest holiday commemorating the abolition of sanctioned slavery in the United States. And whereas on this anniversary, each year organizations and individuals throughout North Carolina and our nation celebrate African American heritage, history, freedom, and culture with events and ceremonies that reflect the power of community, family, art, and tradition in the face of oppression. And whereas despite more than 150 years since abolition of slavery, there remain economic, institutional, and social barriers for Black people in America. Now, therefore, I, Jonathan D. Williams, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the town of Spencer, and on behalf of the entire board of aldermen and all our citizens, do hereby proclaim June 19th, 2024 as Juneteenth Day. Be it further proclaimed that we call upon the citizens of the town of Spencer to observe Juneteenth as an opportunity to reflect, rejoice, and work toward a brighter future as we continue to address racial injustices in our society today. In witness whereof, I have ordered the town seal affixed by my signature on this, the 11th day of June in the year of our Lord, 2020. All right, board, two very, very important recognitions, celebrations, and events in our history that led to freedom for people across the world. And I think we recognize still that there are many people that are not free and that are still oppressed, and may that serve as a reminder for us that we may be always working for the greater good of all people in this world. Are there other recognitions at this time from board members? Okay. Hearing none, we will move now to public comment. And I'm looking at our list. We do not have anyone signed up to speak for public comment this evening. Just want to take a moment and make sure that that is correct. All right. And I'll check with the clerk. Have we received any written correspondence?
I have not received any,
Okay.
no, sir.
We do have one email that was sent to board members that was asked to be read aloud, so we'll do that this evening. I do want to point out for future written correspondence, the intent of written correspondence, it's fine to email board members because we do receive that, especially if you're emailing or writing all board members. We all receive that collectively. But for purposes of public comment, the intent when we ask the clerk if we received any written correspondence, that would be written correspondence that would have sent to the manager or the clerk for the purpose of being given to the board that the board as a whole may not have seen. So just want to clarify that going forward, that if we receive those, that's why we ask the clerk if she's received any of that. This email, there was some misunderstanding. I think the individual had intended for it to be read aloud, and it wasn't last week, and so we're going to read that tonight. But the clerk had not received that correspondence, so just want to make sure that folks are aware of that. Our practice going forward will be, if we read written correspondence, that's going to be only if it's not been addressed to the entire board and we're not aware of it.
Mayor, I'd like to interject one
Sure.
thing. Per general statute, since we are no longer in an emergency status, people should be present to give public comment. However, if the board chooses to, they may read something out loud just so that the public is aware.
Correct. Thank you. All right, Mr. Howe.
Sure. This email was from late May, May 24th, from Miss Gray, who's a citizen and resident of Spencer, and I'll read her email in full right now. So it begins with, good evening, Alderman Miller. First and foremost, thank you for your comments on May 21st, 2024 during the budget workshop. I appreciate that you spoke up and openly stated what many of us, the silent majority, are saying in our yards and driveways. As a long-term resident, over 20 years, and property owner, several issues of concern to me. On a basic level, I am concerned that parts of the budget are being planned based on grants not received, specifically related to PPE for the fire department. I am concerned with what appears to me to be flippant remarks regarding the ability or desire of members of this community to understand the budget. I am concerned with this board's attempt to budget for the community they want to have while disenfranchising members of the existing community. I am concerned that the infrastructure is not being taken care of, the sinkhole on the 2nd Street Park and the sinkhole on Harrison by the clinic. I am concerned that this board does not understand or care that those of us who own property in this town and are the tax base of this town have had a huge tax increase this past year, and they are now proposing another tax increase, although the newsletter told us it was just a cup of coffee. On the subject of Parks and Recreation as a whole, I believe that the town and the board and the town of Spencer should have a more complete understanding of what is required for the development of both programming and parks. First and foremost, the town of Spencer is required to comply with Title II of the ADA. This means that all programs and physical assets must comply with the requirements of the ADA. Jefferson Street Park, 2nd Street Park, the Library Park, and the ball field all have significant ADA compliance issues. I hope that the board moves towards the development of a Parks and Recreation Board/Commission to guide this process. Thank you again for speaking up and asking these valuable questions. Warmest regards, Carla Gray, 211 North Yadkin Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Howe, and thank you, Ms. Gray, for sending that correspondence in. All right, we'll move on board to the consent agenda. You have before you several items that are on our consent agenda for this evening. Is there any need to pull any of the items on the consent agenda from the consent agenda for further discussion tonight? And if there are not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
There's a motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Mr. Howe. Sorry, Ms. Moody. All in favor? All right. All opposed? And the consent agenda is approved unanimously. All right. The next item is to consider amending our Personnel Policy Article 3. Mr. Franzese.
Thank you very much, Mayor and members of the board. Tonight, we have on the agenda a recommended amendment to our personnel policy. As a reminder, this was adopted in March of 2021. It was a very comprehensive rewrite and many new policies that were put together. And we have amended it a few times. Last time was in February of 2023. And tonight, what we'd like you to consider are amendments to Article 3 of our policy, which is the pay plan. And we believe this will do a few things. One is to align with best practices, but also improving our ability to attract and recruit and retain talent. Specifically, there is a new section in our pay plan that is being recommended called Other Increases, and this section would give authority to the town manager to approve, to consider for approval a few types of temporary and permanent pay adjustments that are all kind of special circumstances, and this would include concurrence with the finance officer that we have funding available to make these adjustments. The three types of increases, I'll go over them. The first is a temporary increase. So there may be a time where there's a vacant position and we have a staff person do work that is above the scope of their typical job. And what this would provide is that if that continues for more than 30 days and it's taking up at least half of their time, then they would be eligible for a 5 to 10% temporary increase in their pay rate while they're on that assignment of extra duties. The second would be a retention adjustment, and that would be a special circumstance where if somebody had a bona fide job offer to go elsewhere, that would give us the ability to do our best to keep them through this would be a permanent adjustment to their pay, again as a retention adjustment. And then the third is called a special administrative bonus, which would be kind of a one-time lump sum payment that is upon continuing and long-term exceptionally meritorious service performed by a town employee. So those are the three categories, and again, one's a permanent increase, one's a temporary increase in pay rates, and then the third is kind of a one-time lump bonus type situation to try to recognize our staff and again help with recruiting and retaining our excellent team members. And then the other adjustment in the article has to do with the holiday bonus and adjusting the hours involved in for our part-time police and fire staff and how they qualify to make sure we're aligned with the practices and the current requirements. So those are the recommended changes, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, thank you, Mr. Franzese. Board members, any questions on the proposed personnel policy changes?
Mr. Francis, is this in line with other towns, cities, counties, particularly towns our size? Is this pretty much standard?
So that's a good question. I have not done a full study of towns our size. I will say that this language in the section 14 is heavily borrowed from what's in the City of Concord personnel policy. I looked there for a good example, and but I have not done a study of personnel policies of other towns of our size.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I think really what's necessitated the need for this is recognizing that there are conditions and cases that come up. We're having, as the manager, having that flexibility to be able to be a little more nimble within our pay plan to recognize these certain cases because there are times we ask our staff to go above and beyond, and that they perform at a very, very high level, above and beyond what we should expect them to do. And we need to make sure that we're recognizing that. And then there are cases too where, we want to make sure that we're not only recruiting, but retaining top quality staff for the town. So being able to have that flexibility within the budget and the means that we have to be able to do that, I think is important.
I understand how important it is to keep our people, and good employees are hard to find, and it's expensive to train somebody new, to have them leave. I wonder, though, about what you consider a bona fide external job offer, and does that mean that the employee has gone out of our area to search for a job and then come back to us and say, okay, they're going to pay me this much, how much will you give me?
Yes, it means they have an offer in writing. When we hire somebody, we give them a conditional job offer that states the conditions of their employment, and after that point, they proceed into the background search and that sort of thing. So it would be if somebody had that in hand, and essentially, maybe even at the point of wanting to tender a resignation to accept another position, it would give us at that point the ability to try to keep them. And again, we may not be able to come in the stratosphere of the pay rate, but it would give us some ability to do the best we can to keep them.
My only question is, if you have a person who's looking to leave, is money enough to keep them? Or are they just going to say, okay, I'll settle for this and stay?
Right.
I like to think that they don't need to look for something somewhere else, that we're treating them fairly, we're paying them the way they should be paid. Just my observation.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. I think what we don't want to do is have something in here that's going to encourage folks to go out and price shop. But I would say those retention type bonuses are fairly typical, definitely in the private sector, to be able to have that flexibility. And it gives the manager the flexibility to offer it if it's somebody that we feel is not price shopping, but that is, there are a lot of reasons people look for other jobs. Sometimes it's because they have families to take care of and family circumstances. So to be able to have that flexibility, I think, is important. But I do think it puts a lot of responsibility on the manager to be able to discern what's price shopping versus what's a realistic desire to retain staff.
Okay.
Sometimes they're not looking, they are approached.
Very often.
So,
yeah,
that's
often.
another scenario.
That's the thing that
Same thing, but we do need to have a little bit of negotiating that we can do if we really want to try to keep someone.
And unfortunately, that's the thing that we're up against,
Yeah.
and every municipality is up against, is the talent pool is limited. And because the talent pool is limited, these folks are competing against one another to try and attract new employees. So we want to keep those folks from coming into our community. We want to keep our staff.
Yeah, we want to keep our staff. You're right. Exactly. So we tell them they can't go job looking.
We do operate in the employment at will environment, so it has pros and cons.
Any other questions on the policy changes? Okay. Hearing none, is there a motion from the board? The request from staff is to adopt the amendment for Personnel Policy Article 3.
So moved.
Motion is by Ms. Moody. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Sledge. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor? All right, all opposed? And that is also approved. Next is to consider adopting ordinance 24-11. This is rezoning of 1006 and 1008 North Salisbury Avenue to SFR 3. Mr. Blunt.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, you saw this presentation Thursday night, but I'm going to run back through it very quickly for the viewing public. This is a rezoning of those two properties that were just mentioned. The purpose for the rezoning is that there are two homes on a single property. The property owner wants to subdivide so that he'll have one home on each property. Unfortunately, the lot is too small for the current zoning classification to allow two properties to be developed. Therefore, we're asking for a rezoning of this property, which is across the street from the furniture company. And there is an aerial view where you can see the two homes. There's a street view from Salisbury Avenue looking at the two homes. That circle shows where on our zoning map it's located, and it is located amongst other similarly zoned properties, mostly residential development. And this is the suggested motion language. I believe you have an ordinance in your package. If you so desire to approve this, you would adopt the ordinance first and then adopt the statement of consistency that is along with that. Be glad to answer your questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Blunt. Board, we've heard about this last week at our pre-agenda meeting and then again tonight. Are there any questions that have come up since last week regarding this? Okay. Is there a motion from the board? Again, staff is recommending rezoning these two addresses to SFR 3. And we'll need a motion and approval, and then also a motion for the statement of consistency and reasonableness.
I'll make a motion that we recommend the changing of the rezoning to SFR-2 to SFR-3.
Okay, there's a motion from Mr. Miller. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mayor Pro Tem. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, all opposed? That's approved unanimously. And now we'll also need a motion for a statement of reasonableness and consistency.
Mr. Mayor, I move we adopt a statement of consistency and reasonableness stating that we find that this rezoning is consistent in general with the town's comprehensive land use plan per requirements of General Statute 160D 605A. Further find this rezoning to be reasonable in all ways as prescribed by 160D 605B. This rezoning will be beneficial to the citizens of the town of Spencer.
All right, there's a motion. You've heard that from Mr. Howe. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Sledge. All in favor? All right, all opposed? And that's approved unanimously. All right, the next item is to consider adopting text amendment ordinance 24-14, development ordinance technical standards manual allowing roads with 40-foot wide right-of-way in limited cases. Mr. Blunt.
Again, you saw this presentation Thursday night. You offered me some good questions and good challenges. So I'll run through very quickly the previous slides, and then I've got a few new slides to answer your questions. This was the Bell Mead subdivision at the corner of 7th and Hawkinstown Road, platted in 1954. And within that subdivision, certain roads were built, the ones shown in black. Certain roads were not built, the ones shown in yellow, although the right-of-ways were established for those unbuilt roads. Those right-of-ways, by the way, are 40 feet wide, and that's why all this has to do with 40-foot wide right-of-ways. What that does is leaves a number of parcels of land unbuildable because they don't have access to a public road, which is required by our development ordinance. And this is a good example of another one off Hawkinstown Loop Road, where the black line is Hawkinstown Loop Road. The yellow line would be a road right-of-way, existing right-of-way. But all those lots in there, and I think there's 10 lots on that particular piece, they can't be built because they don't have access to a public road. And when property owners ask to get a zoning permit to build a house, I have to tell them they can't do that until they build the road. And unfortunately, on a 40-foot wide right-of-way, they can't meet our current road standards. Our road standards require a 50-foot right-of-way. They require ditches on each side. They require sidewalks on both sides. So they can't meet the requirement, and they don't have enough right-of-way, even if they could afford to meet the requirement. And that led us to start thinking about ways to help these property owners. We did some research, NCDOT's right-of-ways. That was an example from Kannapolis that got it down to, I think, 45 feet. We also looked to see a fair number of existing 40-foot right-of-ways throughout the town with roads of various width. This is Grant Street that has a 40-foot right-of-way and approximately 18 feet of paving. And that right-of-way runs from about the top of the hill on the left to the right-hand side of the ditch on the right. Shows you that it is possible to build a road on a 40-foot right-of-way. This is back in that Bellmead subdivision on the road that was built, which was Tabor Street, looking to the left down one of those right-of-ways. Benson Street is what it's actually named. That side of it was built just a little bit and was used as a driveway to that first house. But if you flip it around the other way, you see that it was not built out and it's only been used for farm vehicles to get to that barn. There's another right-of-way off Hawkinstown Road, and it's not the gravel part, that's a driveway. The part that's actually a right-of-way is where all those trees are. And yet there's 10 lots behind those trees that can't be built because there's no road there. What we had proposed to you was this cross-section, which allowed a 40-foot right-of-way, and it added note 6 to the list of notes, basically giving me authority to consider granting approval for a 40-foot right-of-way on existing platted subdivisions in our ETJ. So it was very limited in its scope. It also is limited by the ability to fit it in there based on the topography of the area where it's being requested. You had some good questions. The questions that I wrote down had to do with whether a 40-foot right-of-way would be acceptable to NCDOT. Tabor Street and Hawkins Loop Road are both NCDOT roads. They're not city roads. Obviously, these are in the ETJ, so they're not going to be any city roads on this particular issue. You asked, and the department heads came up and talked to you about it. Can we get a fire engine or a garbage truck down a road on a 40-foot right-of-way? And really that has more to do with the pavement than it does with the right-of-way, but we'll get to that in just a second. Can we put no parking signs up on the right-of-way? And will the ditches be adequate for drainage? So let's try to answer some of those questions. I talked to our NCDOT representative, and he said, yes, they would accept 40-foot right-of-ways into maintenance, but only if they have curb and gutter. And to get one with ditches, there is one that's got a 45-foot, but they said they basically require a 50-foot right-of-way. And again, the topography can make it even wider than that. So the basic answer is no, because you can't afford to put curb and gutter in when you really can't afford to build the road in the first place. So NCDOT will probably not accept these into their maintenance system with a 40-foot right-of-way. Fire engines. I checked online, found numerous things. Surprisingly, I think this picture is from Australia, but it's the same information I got everywhere else, is that you really need a 12-foot road for a fire engine to pass. And that means 12 foot with no obstructions on either side, mailboxes, telephone poles, etc. And then when you actually park the fire truck and open it up for use, you need 20 feet of clear space. So a 12-foot road works, it just barely works. If it doesn't have any obstructions on either side and has a good shoulder on either side of the road, then the 12-foot road could work. It's not optimal by any means. Optimal is this. I think this was from the National Fire Association. Everything they show in there shows 20 feet of pavement. And then it shows you all the basic turn radiuses and area or circumference diameter of a cul-de-sac and various types of intersections. None of these roads that I'm showing you will have these. No parking signs. Surprisingly to me, NCDOT says they rarely grant permission to put no parking signs on state roads in residential areas. They explain partially why that is true. I won't go into the details, but I will tell you that probably the answer will be no as far as putting no parking signs. And I'll back up and say, even if they said we could put no parking signs up there, how do you enforce it? Drainage, and I should ask our mayor to explain this because he can do it better than I can. The drainage ditch design depends on the topography, and the topography depends on the pitch of the land, the amount of inflow that's coming in, the volume, distance between outflows, lots of things that go into the design of a proper ditch system. The one on the left, I put in the contour lines, 2-foot contour lines. This is that one I showed you originally off Hawkinstown Road, and you can see that the water flows from either end to the middle and then flows south. And because those lines are so far apart, what that's telling you is that that's a very flat piece of land. So the ditching system would have to take that into account. The one on the right, you're going to hear a better presentation on this later, but that's the Lincoln Avenue. The contour lines are very close together, and they pitch to the left or the west, and therefore it will drain very well. It has a good drainage system. Maybe too good. If you get it too steeply pitched, it erodes out your drainage ditches. And that's as far as I'm going to go with my expertise in ditching. We had a staff meeting this morning, and I'll give Anna credit for solving my problem because I was struggling with this issue. She looked surprised over it. We had a nice roundtable discussion trying to figure out what the recommendation should be on this issue and on the Lincoln Avenue issue. And I had made a comment about a bottleneck, and she said, I don't remember you emphasizing that very much in your presentation. And I got thinking about that a little bit, and the bottleneck has to do with the Lincoln Avenue presentation, but it also helps me come to a conclusion on this particular issue, because the solution in isolation is not really a solution. And if you just look at what I've given you so far and make a decision on whether we should or should not grant 40-foot right-of-ways, then you're not seeing the big picture and you're not making a good decision. So let's go back and look a little bit. There is the Hawkins Loop Road situation. The solid black line vertical is Hawkins Loop Road, 40-foot right-of-way. That picture on the right-hand side shows that it's about 14 feet of pavement, not a very good ditch system, very flat land. The dotted black line is the road that we propose being allowed as a 40-foot right-of-way. Now, if we didn't allow that, if y'all say, no, we want to stick with the 60-foot right-of-ways, what you would have is a 60-foot right-of-way with a 20-foot road connecting to a 40-foot right-of-way with no ditches, no sidewalks, and 14 feet of pavement. So have you really accomplished anything by taking that small piece of land and requiring it to have the best of roads and right-of-ways? This is the Tabor Avenue situation. The solid black line is Tabor. The dotted line is the road right-of-way that would lead to those 10 lots in there. If we required him to have a 60-foot right-of-way and 20 feet of pavement and big ditches on both sides and sidewalks on both sides, would it make any sense? Because that's a picture of Tabor which is about 14 feet of pavement, 16 feet in some places. Very flat ditches, very flat land, and all built on a 40-foot right-of-way. Have we accomplished anything by making these property owners build a fancy road that connects to a substandard road? This one we'll get on a little more detail later, but this is the Lincoln Avenue situation. In fact, I'll save the punchline for that one when I make that presentation. But same thought process. A solution in isolation is no solution at all. So I came back to that original recommended 40-foot right-of-way cross-section and added a few more notes. And I'm not really asking you tonight to necessarily adopt this unless you feel really comfortable with it. But we would modify this cross-section, adding notes either in the cross-section itself or in the street section of our development ordinance that would address the issues of who's going to provide maintenance. If it's an NCDOT road, they would have to build it to NCDOT standards. If it's not going to be NCDOT and it's going to be in our ETJ, it would be a private road. It would not be a town road. And they would have to note on the deeds for their properties that the property owners would maintain them. The ditching system would be designed by a professional engineer to ensure proper drainage. And on private roads, we would require the no parking signs because we could do that with our authority through our development ordinance, although we probably cannot do it on DOT roads. So those notes and others that we might add to it, but ultimately it would be a developer or property owner coming to me as your zoning administrator, showing me that in an existing platted subdivision in the ETJ, that they only have a 40-foot right-of-way, asking permission to build this standard of road on that 40-foot right-of-way. I would look through all the material that I would need to confirm to myself that it was a proper road and would be a workable road, and then would approve it if all indications showed that was the best way to get those properties developed. The other option is to not do this. And then I have it well memorized when people call me up and say, can I build on these lots? I've actually almost memorized some of the parcel numbers. So when they call, I don't have to look it up anymore. I just tell them the same story. Sorry, you can't build on that piece of property. There's always a juggling act as a planner and an administrator to help people use their piece of property the way they want to use it, right up to the point where it does some harm to the town as a whole or to a neighboring property owner. This is one of those instances where I think it's good for us to help that property owner develop his property. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Blunt. Board questions?
Yes. Mr. Blunt, it's funny. We must have arrived at the same place independently, and the mayor can confirm that I have it written right here. I've got written down, I see three options. And number one is the private road, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Number two is to go with the 40-foot curb and gutter, and I agree. That's not really workable because that's, what, $1,000 a linear foot, $1,200 a linear foot. I mean, it's a no solution, realistically.
And you really hadn't accomplished anything at that point.
Or to leave it as it is. And economics will eventually take over, and perhaps in the far-flung future, the state eminent domains the 40-foot, expands it to 60-foot, and then, 40 years from now, it's all fixed.
I'll give you one other option before you go on. We can relinquish our ETJ back to Rowan County.
That's probably not the option either. So, I come to the private road thing. To me, that strikes me. Either leaving it as it is, and eventually economics will fix it, or not. Or, I think I could go with the private road thing. I think I have some concerns because, as we've noted, there are a few spots in town where this could potentially apply. And to borrow from my former colleague, Sins of the Fathers, 40 years from now, I don't want boards asking why we did this. But I think a private road would be good. I like your recommendations. I think the two I would add to it, and this could get sticky. I think number one's not sticky, and that's a maintenance agreement, where not only is it on the deed that they're a private road owner, but that the owners collectively, future owners of these lots, have a maintenance agreement amongst them. It's handed down like a restrictive covenant. So they own the deed, they know on the maintenance agreement that they're responsible for fixing it. So they don't come to the town, why did you do this? Pay for it. We can say, no, you knew what you were getting into. It's on the deed. Talk to your attorney. And I think the second thing is, and this is stickier, but we talked last week about, would this be the full road at one time, or at least a section of the road at one time, or would this be piecemeal? To my mind, at least in this application, they'd have to do the whole thing, right? I mean, almost like a development. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me for someone to pave 25 feet and the next developer to do 25 feet, the next developer to do 25 feet. I mean, that seems like, again, something that property owners are going to hate us for doing if we don't just say, hey, if you want to use all 10, 12 lots, you're going to have to sign a maintenance agreement. You're going to have to put this on your deeds. Go ahead and just figure out how you're going to do this, the whole thing. That's my thought.
I'll answer both of those together. And I came back to this slide because while there are 10 lots there are, I think, 7 different property owners.
Sure.
And I have suggested in the past, you guys got to get together so you can afford to build a road, whether it's the fancy road or the simple road. It takes all of you to build it. And they hadn't gotten to that point yet. So it's going to be an individual property owner that owns 1 or 2 lots coming and saying, I'd like to build on my 2 lots. And my answer is still going to be, you have to have access to a public road. If it's the lot on the very right-hand side of that yellow line, then all he's going to have to build is his 50 feet of road to get to his lot. And then I'll tell the next guy the same story when he comes to. If it happens to be the guy on the far left end of that yellow line, he's got to build the whole road. And I can write into his deed that it's a private road and that you're responsible for maintenance of that road. But I can't do anything to the other property owners at that time because they're not a part of the deal that we're making. When those other property owners come to me and say, I need a zoning permit to build a house, I'll look at my checklist and the one item that says, do you have access to a public road? They sort of do then. They have access to a private road, but it is eventually out to Tabor in this case, so it's access to a public road. So the leverage that I have gets lost as the road gets built. And I'll show you even more clearly when I show you the Lincoln Avenue situation. This one, they're all sitting side by side. Lincoln Avenue, all the lots are down at one end, but all the lots are owned by one contractor. So it's a whole different situation. In this case, it just gives me that one step option of, I still got to tell them you have to have public access. You have to have access to a public road, excuse me. You have to have access to a public road and you have to build it. All I'm going to be able to say at that point is, but you can build it on a 40-foot right-of-way, and you can build it without sidewalks, and you can build it. You have to build it to our thickness and development standards, but you can build it as a private road. And on your particular deed, it's going to say private road. I'm responsible for maintenance. The next guy, I can negotiate the same deal with him. The next guy, I negotiate the same deal with him. So it gives me flexibility to negotiate, but I can't twist their arm. I got no leverage to do that.
So can we ask our real estate legal expert how this shakes out? Because, I mean, I see this being a nightmare legally to, you know, we can allow it and we can say, yep, it's all yours, property owners. But that coordination, I see that being a failure from the get-go.
It's a tough one. Number one, in my experience with real estate, you're not gonna find many banks that are loaning money to build a house on a private road unless the owner has an access and maintenance agreement. Because the bank's gonna wanna know that if they ever have to foreclose, that they have the access that they can grant to a buyer in foreclosure. And they're gonna wanna know that everybody else on that road has the obligation to help maintain that road. So, I mean, that's the first issue is, are you really gonna see anybody coming to build a house there if they're borrowing money to do it? But yes, there are houses that are developed on private roads in the county and in elsewhere. It's whether we require them to have access to a public road or not. But yeah, it's you know, this is a muddy issue.
Our ordinance already allows private roads, by the way,
Yeah.
under certain circumstances. So it's in our ordinance already. It's just slightly different set of hoops in this particular situation. This one doesn't meet the right-of-way requirements. Was why we got here in the first place.
I mean, I'm all for helping property owners that want to utilize undeveloped land to be able to make the most use of their land and have the flexibility to do with it, in this case, kind of what they want. But what I also don't want to do is allowing that create a hardship for other property owners that are beside them, or create a hardship for the town down the road. So I think we've addressed some of the questions relative to state maintenance versus town maintenance, and making sure that we're not accepting obligation for something that the state's not going to accept an obligation for. But on the same token, I don't want us to allow something that's going to create more of a headache than it's going to provide an opportunity for folks that own the property. I can just see it, down the road from a maintenance agreement standpoint, that being difficult to get in place, but then even more difficult to actually, for those property owners to hold each other's feet to the fire to make that happen.
Mayor, that's where the issue comes in. And what we do see around the county are old subdivisions that were developed with private roads that weren't taken into the state system 30 years ago. And so I bet our planning department gets 10 or 15 calls a year from homeowners wondering what we can do. We require bonds for subdivisions now where you have to put the road into DOT specs, but those roads that weren't are bad, and there is no agreement amongst the homeowners for maintenance or dues, and so it just doesn't get fixed. Now the problem is, how do I get emergency services down there? So as a town, I'm not so worried about the homeowner that walks into it on his own, but now I'm worried about if I have a fire response or a police response, or I'm trying to get somebody down a private road that's not maintained. That's where the issue tends to circulate back, which is EMS calls and says, well, we can't get down that road anymore. Or you get into a fight where homeowners are arguing about who has access and who's not playing, and next thing you know, there's a barricade in front of them, and we can't get down the road. To the extent that an owner owns more than one parcel or owns land that he wants to subdivide and extend a street, they can subject their property to the maintenance agreement and subject lots to the maintenance agreement. As they sell lots to other people, they come in subject to that maintenance agreement. But the concept of sort of leaving it up to the people to figure it out, it leads to a lot of problems that you may not inherit as the mayor in 40 years. But someone else might.
And I think that's what our board, we care less about what we're going to inherit, but more about what those that come after us are going to have to inherit, and what the residents in our town and the ETJ end up having to deal with down the road.
So, to the issue of, putting in a private road and how do you bind future maintenance, the only way to do that is with a maintenance agreement amongst the owners that have an interest in the easement or the private road.
And to a point of clarity, right now this is in the ETJ. So those emergency vehicles that are going out there.
One of them is, right?
Both of them right now.
Okay.
All of them right now. I don't want to say both because there's a lot of parcels out there. All this is prefaced with it's in the ETJ. So it's Ellis Crossroads going to fight the fire. It's Sheriff's Department going to arrest
Which is even worse. We're making a decision we're passing the responsibility off on county.
We are requiring that it be built to a pretty high standard as far as the quality of the road. The road itself is going to be built to our current standards as far as pavement and gravel and all that good stuff. So in the future, if this area decides it should be annexed, we would be annexing a road that was built to our standards originally. It just didn't have sidewalks. So it's not like we're allowing a gravel road to go in. And again, not kidding, but just a little bit, give it back to Rowan County and let them build a driveway in there. And to heck with it, we won't worry about it. They can develop their lots. We don't have to provide zoning and subdivision control. There are lots of records, so the county wouldn't require a bond for the guy on the end to build him a gravel driveway in there. It's public right of way.
What is the difference? And I should know, so I'm admitting that I don't know. What is the difference in our ordinance from driveway to easement to private road to major minor subdivision state standard roads? Where's the threshold, like the property threshold? 8 lots, 6 lots, 4 lots. Where does that break down?
It's various sections of our ordinance. So I'm going to give you a convoluted answer. Any subdivision of 3 or more lots that requires an internal road is called a major subdivision and immediately kicks it into the full-blown road system requirements. A property that wants to divide into 2 properties and develop the back of his, you see those long skinny lots to the right there. They've all got a house sitting up on the road frontage. They would like to subdivide off the back and build another house. Then we build what's called a flag lot. We get a 20-foot strip of land next to the, so that precludes the road frontage requirement of our ordinance because that back lot doesn't have road frontage or has 20 feet of road frontage. And they can build a gravel driveway in to their house. They have to pave the section that connects to the paved road, but the rest of it can be gravel. The private road section is a little harder to determine as to where there's a breaking line. But if a property owner of one of those larger parcels came and said, I want to divide this into 3 parcels and build 2 more houses on it, I've already got a house on the front, and I want to build a road, can I do it? And the answer would be, yeah, you can build the road. It has to be to our current standards. NCDOT is not going to take it over for maintenance, so it's going to be a private road. So for a couple lots, and there's probably more details than that, I've never been asked to approve a public or a private road here, so I can't tell you from experience. But there's various breakpoints in it.
So here's my thought, and I don't want to belabor the point. And it really, I think my personal thought is that I'm not totally against it, but I think we might need to sit on it and think a little more. But I think where my mind's at is that maybe, especially in light of the development that we are experiencing and going to experience, this is going to be a common problem. To your question, or to your point, a solution in isolation is not a solution. Maybe more holistically, the major subdivision category needs to expand to a higher level of home. So, maybe it's 8 or 10 homes, and then private roads can be up to 4 or 5 homes, 6 homes, 7 homes, whatever it is. And then essentially this is permitted. It's fine the way they do it, as long as there's a maintenance agreement, it's recorded on the plat, et cetera. And that's in line with my experience. Private road can be 4 homes. Anything above 4 starts the minor subdivision category. And I think it's after 12 is major. And so that comes from, much like Jay described, lots of aggravation from people getting private roads in large subdivisions 20, 30, 40 years ago, and now those roads are basically unusable and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to fix, and they want a government to take care of it, and of course it's not the government's obligation. They don't know that. They didn't know that. So, I mean, my thought is I wonder if maybe, I hate to say rewrite our ordinance, but maybe we need to expand that major category to 8, 10, 12, whatever it is, and then inside of that number, a private road can fit better. And then if it's only 6 or 7 homes on a private road, you're not going to get wear and tear on the road. You know, over the course of 20 or 30 years, it's really going to degrade it substantially. You know, if it's 40 homes, that's a different story. I mean, that's my thought. I mean,
my problem is not so much with new developments.
Sure.
Because in our new developments, I want to make sure they do build the good roads and sidewalks. So I'd like to leave that as low as possible. Matter of fact, I'd like for single lots to require sidewalks or payment in lieu of. So that's another suggestion I'll come to you with later. These are existed platted subdivisions. That's all I'm trying to address, is existed platted subdivisions that have less than our required road right of way. And can we come up with a solution to that road right of way situation? And let's make a little sausage while we're all here, and I'll ask Jay. In this particular case, I've got 7 different property owners. The guy on the left-hand end decides he'll build the road because he wants to develop his 2 lots down there. And we require him to put in his deed that he'll be responsible for maintenance and granting access to the other lots along that road. And then when the guy in the middle comes to me and asks for a zoning permit, can I say, I'll give you a zoning permit, but you're going to have to write into your deed that you'll accept your share of responsibility for maintenance of the road? I can do anything I want to until we get taken to court. That's why I'm asking.
Tell everybody it's great being government. You can do anything you want to till a judge says you can't. But if our ordinance doesn't require it, we can't require it.
Well, I know we'd have to change the ordinance.
Yeah, so we would have to change the ordinance. And so the specific question in there is, can we require that in an ordinance that a property owner join a maintenance agreement?
Doesn't sound right, does it?
No, because that road could already be in bad shape. It seems to me that the requirement would be on the front end to go get the maintenance agreement from all the property owners now while he's building a fresh road, so that they have a maintenance agreement that includes all of the current properties that would be using it. So they would have what we've been talking about, just to give it context, here in this parking lot. It would sort of be the same thing. They would each have a granted easement to come and go, subject to a pro rata share of maintenance, just like we were talking about out here in the parking lot. It seems to me that I would put the requirement on the front end for the owner who wants to develop to go get the signatures that he needs on a maintenance agreement to put in a new road. And it's better for him to do it when he's building a new road for him than 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 years from now, when people don't like each other, or there's something wrong with the road, or someone's now bringing in a commercial truck to empty a dumpster. It gets infinitely more difficult later. So to me, it seems that while we're working with the developer, say, hey, here's your chance. You're offering to build them a new road. Go get a maintenance agreement with them. Most of these people won't see a day that they have to pay for maintenance. And it should be easier. It would be better on the front end, I think.
Okay.
If I'm forced to make some.
Separate question. In this case, does our development ordinance require that road have a cul-de-sac?
If it were a new road, yes, it would have to have a cul-de-sac. It would have to have either a cul-de-sac or what's called a bulb turnaround for the fire engine.
So then that brings up the question that you had. You know, say those first 2 lots want to develop. Well, they're not going to put a cul-de-sac in there. The cul-de-sac would be at the end of the right-of-way. But until the rest of that road is developed by the other adjoining property owners, how are emergency vehicles going to be able to get in there and maneuver?
We do see that issue in the county. Because if you just drive down any county road, you see all these just straight road subdivisions. Straight road back, houses on either side. And it's the biggest argument, Chief, with our Fire Marshal Deborah Horn and our emergency services trucks, because they are looking at new standards. They may have adopted new standards for the turnaround for emergency vehicles. And now you're talking about having to take somebody's property to create a large enough turnaround for an emergency vehicle. And so we do see that sort of stem road request. But we've adopted those standards that if you do that, you do have to put a bulb at the end for emergency vehicle turnaround. And that's something, I don't know, I can't remember, it's crazy, like 75 feet or something. Yeah, and so it's really not plausible here, especially if you have already developed lots downstream.
I'll show you this one just as an example of sort of what you're suggesting to do. This is up on the end of Tabor Street on the northwest side of the Bellmead subdivision at some point, and I can't read the date from this distance.
1987, it looks like.
The property owners of the right-of-way that was going to serve those properties got together and decided to plat out a 60-foot right-of-way with a 20-foot road and a cul-de-sac at the end to facilitate developing their particular lots. Now, it still connects to a 40-foot right-of-way for Tabor, but apparently somebody told them way back when that they had to do that. And you see all the signatures of the various property owners that agreed to do it. Road still never got built. So they've got a nice laid out road that would meet our current standards. Hadn't been built on. It may be, with all the economic pressure we're seeing, maybe the first part of that area that gets built on. And this may be an example to show other people this is what you need to do if you want to develop your property. To date, it's not been a workable solution. The Lincoln Avenue, it actually has become a workable solution with some caveats that I'll mention to you in a little while. I take it from the sense of what I'm hearing that we need to put this one on hold.
I think there's some additional things that collectively we need to look into. I'm all about playing things to the end of the tape, and I don't think we've played this one to the end of the tape. That dates me, doesn't it? But I don't think we've played this one to the end of the tape and thought through all the potential ramifications. I think the private road strategy is a good strategy, but I think it's still got some inherent challenges to it. So
I totally agree, and I'm mucking around trying to find a solution. So,
and I think so, and I don't know. I mean, boards speak. Me personally, I think you've said it. I think we want to find a way to make these properties developable for those property owners, but we also don't want to, in doing that, create hardships for neighboring property owners or for the town in the long run, or for the county and their emergency services for that matter.
Yeah.
So I think board, is there general agreement that we want to find a way to make this happen?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We'll keep working on it. If y'all have any suggestions, please forward them to me.
Okay.
And we'll do some research for what other communities have done.
You probably, you may not have seen it, but late this afternoon, I emailed an article from WBT and Queen City News about orphan roads.
So they're dealing with the same sort of issues in Charlotte and Mecklenburg County as we are. Theirs have been down in the Palisades area near Valentine.
And it's a major road. I mean, it's used by a lot. Yeah. So, I mean, that probably would never happen in this instance. But
and you mentioned the state, well, it wouldn't, because this isn't an orphan road, this is an orphan right-of-way.
Right.
But you mentioned the state legislature was taking action, so I looked it up, and there's actually a bill that's probably going to be approved creating a committee to investigate the orphan roads across the state. And they think that there are literally thousands of these roads, and they're going to try to find some legislative solution to it. Unfortunately, from Mecklenburg's point of view, it sounded like the state was going to push it off on Mecklenburg to pay for upgrading the roads to NCDOT standards.
Yeah.
Hopefully that doesn't
So
happen.
see there again, that's not a situation we want to set ourselves up for.
Yeah, that was my point. Yeah.
I think in this particular case, and I think, again, Jay said it a minute ago, if the owners can, and maybe they can't agree, they don't talk or whatever, I know that happens, right? But if they can reach a collective solution, I think that makes crafting a regulation much easier on our part, because we're trying to essentially do two things: make something that fits their unique situation, but also something that can be used elsewhere. And I think that makes it incredibly difficult, because I think in most cases you'd have one developer or an ownership group that would be doing this together, not 7, 8, 10 people.
Lincoln Avenue will give us a little more to talk about, so we'll get to that in just a minute. So we'll move on to the next presentation, if that's all right with you, Mr. Mayor.
So the board is not taking any action on this, requesting additional departmental research and input. Okay, next item is to consider adopting ordinance 24-15, our Yadkin River District Small Area Plan.
Again, you saw this presentation Thursday night, but for the viewing public, hopefully we have thousands of people watching the meeting tonight. I wanted to run through the presentation real quickly before asking y'all to adopt this plan. The Yadkin River District Plan, what we will be asking you to do is adopt it so that it can become a part of our town's comprehensive land use plan, and staff can start using it to help us make wise land use decisions as we're doing our jobs. I'm not going to go through many of the details here, except to tell you that our current land use plan supports this concept. It's already built into the plan, so this just adds more details to it. This was a preliminary sketch that I did some time back showing the multiple uses that could take place on this 55-acre old industrial site. And therefore we have in hand now a nice plan. And as I told y'all, I've got copies of this for y'all if you want it. It is extensive. It is supported by economic research that tells us not just that we would like to have some of these things out there and wouldn't it be pretty to do this or do that, but the economics of the region will support this kind of development going forward. The reasoning behind the plan is built into these goals. And I will mention to the viewing public that this is available on our website if they would like to go and read the details. It's about an 80-page report, so I'm trying not to get into too much detail. On the east side of the railroad tracks and Highway 29, which is the largest portion of the Old North Carolina Finishing Company tract, Samet Corporation is working with the current property owners to develop that into an industrial park with approximately 13 buildings and 1.3 million square feet of developed space, creating a lot of tax base and a lot of jobs as we move forward. That is included as a part of this plan, but it's not looked at in any detail because that's being handled separately from this. This is the result of this plan, is what to do with that 55 acres where the old mill sat. And this is basically between the existing town of Yadkin, or Yadkin, I've seen it named numerous things, but let's just call it Yadkin, to the southwest, and then the Yadkin River surrounding the property. This is a peninsula that sticks out into the river. And this is the multi-use approach that our consultant has suggested to us, that includes a number of uses. And my clicker's not working. There it is. Tilted on its edge, it's a little easier to see the various buildings. Most of the stuff to the left or the southwest would be residential of a variety of shapes and forms, from single-family homes, duplexes, quadruplexes, apartments, condominiums, townhouses, etc., meeting a wide range of needs for a lot of people. There's a park space down through the middle. The land that was donated to the town will be developed into park space next to our existing Yadkin River Trailhead Park. There would be retail space, there would be commercial space, office space, parking lots. The beautiful little lake down the edge of the river would remain as a nice feature. The part that amazed me if you looked at that original sketch that I did, I showed some blocks that I thought would be residential, but I didn't show very many. I thought this would be a commercial development more than anything else. But what our consultants came up with is an idea that sort of gives you a captive audience for the retail and commercial that you put out there, because you're going to have, by my count, 547 housing units, which would be a total of about 1,500 people living right here at this development and living in the town of Spencer. This is part of our municipal limits. So not only would we gain all the nice tax base and the wonderful amenities that go along with this, but we would grow by 50% by the development of this particular project. The other items on that list, it's a little hard to read the numbers, but 4,700 square feet of civic space, 64,000 square feet of retail, 37,000 square feet of flex space or office space, 20 acres of parks and recreation, and then a little over a mile of trails that would run down on the water frontage and into the bottomland. This is a little blurb we added to it, and I'll just read the small part there. The Yadkin River District Small Area Plan envisions the transformation of a partially demolished 55-acre industrial site located on the banks of the Yadkin River into a mix of residential options, commercial spaces, public parks, river access points, and civic areas. So that 80-page report encompasses how we're going to do that. And as I mentioned in the beginning, what I'm asking of you tonight is to go ahead and adopt this as an official plan for the town of Spencer, making it a part of our comprehensive land use plan, and therefore authorizing your staff to use this as a part of our decision-making tools when we make land use decisions and bring them to you. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Blunt. Board, what questions do you have?
Any kind of a time frame?
We're going to start building tomorrow. I'll have it finished by the end of the year.
I'll bring you cover.
That sounds good to me.
Let me give an update on that. So, I think the immediate, more near-term development you're going to see off of Long Ferry, and it's going to be the industrial development. I think that area that we're seeing with the Yadkin District Plan, I think the intent would be that's, and the developers have, various developers have expressed that that would be something after this industrial development is started. Once we see businesses coming to Spencer and settling down there, that will drive a need for additional homes and, with the jobs that come and that sort of thing. And then the homes then also drive the commercial retail aspect of that. So, I don't know, crystal ball. I'd like to see there be construction out there on this project within the next 10 years. I mean, I think that's
lifetime.
reasonable. And that's still pretty aggressive, probably.
The only thing I'll add to that crystal ball projection is that we are still seeing, even though the economy slowed down and some of our industrial projects slowed down because of that, and interest rates went up and the borrowing rates for those big companies went up, we're still seeing great demand for residential. Mm-hmm. And with the residential component of this being so large, it wouldn't surprise me that we'll get a trickle of the commercial and industrial buildings on Longs Ferry Road that will take a decade to get them all built out. But somewhere in the first couple of years, somebody's going to come in and say, hey, we want to develop the residential component of this. And I think that could actually be the first big part of this. And once you have 1,500 people driving into a driveway every day and children living on site, somebody's going to say, well, wouldn't that be a great place for a restaurant or a shop or this or that or the other. So this one is one of those things that has what's called tipping points. And once you get one portion of it, it just starts a domino effect and everything gets done. But the industrial part of it is based on demand, how many square feet of production space people need. And any particular year, you'll see 2 or 3 of those buildings built. So you think it's going to take forever, and then in 15 years it's all built out. So it's not dramatic. I think this could be fairly dramatic.
Yeah.
So, a couple things to consider is, in having a plan is so that we have some vision and so something that we can tangibly show folks that they can see, especially when it comes to the development community, that this is what the general area has said is needed. It's what the professional planners have said, and it's what the town of Spencer staff and elected officials have put their stamp of approval on, is trying to promote for our town. That type of development's a game changer for us. We've said the industrial sites are, but 1,500 people in a town that's 3,300, 3,400 people, you're talking about a 50% population growth. That's significant just for that development alone. So it's exciting. And the other thing I think that's so neat about this is, we've been going through the budgeting process. We've been talking about tax dollars and tax increases. These are the types of things that long-term help us push that tax rate down, because we're getting a concentrated population of investment dollars and people. So sales tax, property taxes, all those things are being generated, and good jobs as well. But the piece of that is, this study was funded through a grant, through an appropriation of grant funding that came from the state. So the town didn't have to put into it. It shows that somebody besides the town is investing in us and believes in what this site could be. The development community has rallied behind it. Our economic development commission has, as well as our Rowan Chamber. And so we've got a lot of people that believe in this project. They see the potential of it. And then the reality is, this will be built by a developer. It's not going to be built by the town. Right. The only thing we have out there to maintain is our existing trailhead park, and then we have the potential to activate that donated area for additional parkland. But it's money that's being infused in our community from outside, and I think that's a really, really positive thing for everyone, including our current residents. What will the implication on our budget be? Well, eventually we'll have to provide services out there, since it is in our city limits. But the tax base that will be drawn from that will more than offset that and help to cover some of our other townwide expenses.
And once this is adopted, it sort of protects that too. Is that correct?
It helps. At some point I want to rezone this, but this will definitely help us in being able to say no to some uses.
Okay.
Other questions? All right. Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt the Yadkin River District Small Area Plan?
I move to adopt the Yadkin River Small Area District Plan.
I'll second.
There's a motion by Ms. Sledge and a second by Mr. Howe. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, all opposed? And that is approved unanimously. Thank you all. Mr. Blunt, thank you. Thanks for your time working with our consultants to
absolutely, it was a joy.
Get that happen, make that happen. Okay. The next, this is going to be enjoyable, I think.
Oh, I'm excited.
We are going to receive a presentation from Mr. Blunt on possible modifications to Spencer's livestock.
I'm getting a goat.
So this is for your entertainment purposes primarily, but it may lead to something. So we have all gotten inquiries about mostly chickens, but livestock of various types and what's allowed in Spencer. So I put together this presentation today for your entertainment. Livestock regulations, and a cluck here and a cluck there.
Oh, McDonald.
He keeps talking about chickens, but I know there's goats in this presentation. I know it.
Well, everything's already allowed. It's just.
Listen, some of us don't have 2 acres on 5th Street.
There's what we're going to talk about, but we're going to broach it as chickens because that's what we hear most people talking about. So when you think about urban chickens, hopefully y'all have seen some of these things, and they are very attractive, and they sound good. It sounds like a great thing to have. My wife has been pestering me for years about having some chickens on our 1 acre lot. And I've been able to tell her, no, we can't have chickens because of that. So, y'all may get me in trouble.
Did you have
for this.
one on a 1 acre lot?
I have 1 acre.
Two on a 2 acre lot?
But there's also a bad side to chickens, and keeping chickens in a residential area, lots of chickens cause lots of noise, lots of odor. Chickens sometimes die, and people that don't do a good job of keeping them up create a foul odor. Roosters crow.
There we
A
go.
foul
Lots of
odor,
fun.
yeah, we got
Lot
that.
of fun.
That was funny.
And then I did run across that cartoon and threw it in there. Just some people just don't know what the heck they're doing, so if you can't read it, it says, "Where'd you get all the chickens?" And you got them from the grocery store. So that's probably what I would prefer to. But raising chickens is a beneficial activity for everybody that wants to do it. It creates a good, high-quality protein source. They are attractive creatures, and some people just enjoy them as pets. That lower left-hand corner is the fact that chickens also pick bugs out of your lawn. And if you raise them properly, they will eat up all the bugs in your lawn. You won't have bugs anymore. Everything from mosquitoes to ticks to anything else you can think of. It takes a little more intensive management to make that happen. That's our current ordinance. And the parts in yellow, because we are a town of fairly small lots, those things in yellow are what prevent people from keeping chickens or goats or anything else. The one we immediately jump on is the minimum 2 acres. There's not many lots in town that are 2 acres. But today I started looking at what the 300 feet, that's a stable distance, and then pasture is 200 feet. For some reason I thought it should be the other way around, but it really doesn't matter. Even on my 1 acre lot, I couldn't keep chickens because no part of my lot is more than 300 feet away from my neighbor's house. So a 1 acre lot doesn't work either. I checked a lot of other communities to see what they allowed, and it ranged anywhere from Statesville not allowing chickens at all. There were a number that had the same 2 acre minimum, which must have been the standard long ago. Many of them had below the acreage minimum had the number of chickens that any particular household could have. Some of the more advanced got into the enclosures that were required for chickens, the chicken houses, chicken runs, things of that nature. Concord, after many years of voting not to get into the chicken business, Peter found this looking online. They have just adopted a new ordinance or text amendment that allows chickens. Staff had recommended in their proposal to allow up to 5 chickens on a half-acre lot, and with some other regulations included. The board compromised and said 10 chickens on a 1 acre lot, I believe it is. Yeah, and a maximum of 15 on any lot. So there's lots of different ways to skin the cat as far as chickens. Obviously, what we're trying to address is the noise, the odor, and for some people, the sight of chickens running around in the yard. So I've made a quick list of some things to consider. Number one, any acreage requirement in Spencer is going to almost preclude everybody in the core area that are zoned RMST and living on small lots from having any chickens or livestock. And then as I discovered today, the distance from occupied structures is similar in that it will block almost everybody in Spencer. There's not a whole lot of lots that meet any of those requirements. And just as a side comment, a part of Concord's new ordinance, they have 50 feet to an occupied structure as their limit. So they recognized that when they redrafted theirs. Privacy fencing sounds good, but depending on the proximity of the neighboring property, it may block the view, but it really doesn't do a whole lot of good to block odors and noise. Kyle here, Kyle's not here. Kyle lives in Salisbury, and his last place he lived, the neighbor had chickens. He said they were wonderful. They roosted right outside his bedroom, never had a problem with it. We live in an air-conditioned society today. So for the most part, we keep our windows and doors closed, and noise from a neighboring property is not going to be that big a deal. We can probably take care of the odors and to some degree the noise by writing into our ordinance that those are enforceable code violations. So if we get a call from a neighbor that says my neighbor's got chickens and we've made it legal for them to have chickens, if they go out and find that the chickens have died in the backyard or they're not keeping it cleaned up, or he's got so many chickens that they're making all kinds of noise, or he's got a rooster sitting on top of the barn crowing every morning, he's in violation. So he's in violation of our code and it can be enforced. Unfortunately, on the flip side of that coin is that's more code enforcement actions that have to be taken. So our code enforcement officer will be having a little more work added to his plate. Not a whole lot, and I probably should stress this. When I say we get continuing calls, and I'm sure y'all have gotten contacts from people interested in this, it's not hundreds of people that want to do it. It's probably dozens of people that want to do it. So we're not creating a huge, huge problem if we agree to do something like this, but you need to be aware that there will be some problems. I think the best way, and I think it was Chapel Hill that handled it this way, is you actually have to come in and get a permit to have livestock. And a part of that is to tell what you're going to have, how big your lot is, where on the lot you're going to put the enclosure, what kind of fencing you're going to have. And when you sign it, you're signing an agreement saying that if we get a complaint and come out and find you in violation, we can require you to do away with the animals, to get rid of them. By signing that agreement, it keeps us from having to go to court and a judge tell us that our regulation is unenforceable because it's arbitrary. Noise ordinances, Jay will remember these back from county days. You always want to enforce those noise ordinances. You take them before a judge and he asks you what your noise standard is. And if you don't have a decibel reading and the deputy didn't go out and take a decibel reading, then it's just arbitrary, just his opinion, and there's no statistical way to do it. If this person signs a permit saying, I agree to these terms, it's much more enforceable in court that, hey, you agreed to this up front, your neighbors complained, you got dead chickens in your backyard, your permit's revoked. So those are some of the things that you should think about. The options you have tonight are to leave things as they are and basically outlaw chickens and goats and anything else in town. Or authorize staff to continue working on this and draft a proposal to you for a text amendment using the information we've gathered and other information we can find, come back to you with an actual proposal for a text amendment. And certainly, if that's the route you want to take, please continue to feed us any ideas you have so that we can incorporate those in. So I'll leave it to y'all to decide.
Thank you, Mr. Blunt. Board, what questions or input do you have?
I have one serious and one serious, but it's going to sound funny. Chickens are not that loud unless something's trying to kill them. But clearly it's not that big of a deal if all these other places have enacted this, but eggs bring snakes. We've already got snakes, obviously, but a lot of people have pets. A lot of people have kids. There's going to be a lot of snakes around chickens and chicken coops. Something that maybe people who have never kept chickens before aren't going to be aware of. So maybe we put out a little educational pamphlet before you bring home your chickens. Are you prepared with the amount of snakes that are going to be in your egg house? If you've never dealt with chickens before, welcome to my childhood, okay? If your chickens are making an inordinate amount of noise, you might want to go check on them. Secondly, is anyone else just thinking about the amount of feral cats we have in this town? How many chickens are gonna die? It's not funny, but like we have a lot of cats in this town. There's not gonna be a lot of chickens left.
We have cats.
We have a cat problem. We have a cat problem. Coyotes, fox, fine. We have a lot of cats. And they're never gonna have chickens.
Those would be things we would build into the ordinance for sure. And those are
that
written.
You can't complain if the feral neighborhood cats just killed your chicken.
I won't get into
It's
cats.
not my fault that they live on my porch. They're not mine.
I'm a dog guy.
Some towns, I think, allow hens, but don't allow roosters.
Almost all of them have that
Yeah,
in their
that's
So-
not something you want to get into.
Okay.
I will point out, okay, this has nothing to do with us, but Raleigh has turned it into a tourism thing. Raleigh actually does a tour de coupe. It's, you know, we have in Salisbury the October tour. They actually have a tour de coupe in
They do
Raleigh.
have some nice coops.
Mhm. People tour. Some of their coupes could cost as much as the house. It's pretty insane.
We have had
They
a
like
lot
their
of
chickens.
we have had a lot of avian flu.
That's another thing I was going to bring up.
Recently.
You're inviting
You don't know what you're
vectors
doing.
of disease, so that's something we need to be very, very aware of.
Yeah, it's more commercial, but we still run the risk.
I grew up on a pretty big farm in the western part of the county, and so, I grew up raising livestock. Love it. Love the idea even of urban farming.
I thought you
But
said
also-
bourbon.
Not urban farming.
I love the idea of
Urban
farming
farming.
too.
However, one of the things is we have to recognize is not everybody likes that idea, and we have a lot of folks that live in very close proximity to one another. And we get enough complaints about feral cats and people's dogs barking and things like that. I don't know. I don't know where I
Dogs
stand on
get
this.
bitten by a snake that comes in for somebody's eggs. We're gonna have a lot of complaints.
So if we, I lost my train of thought. If they had to come in and get a permit, would we be able to ask them to speak to their neighbors and get the neighbors to sign off on it?
But the reality is, you
The
can maybe
neighbors
get
like
your
John.
neighbors at that time, but what happens when you get
They
new
move,
neighbors
you know.
in a house that gets sold or they're renting?
Can I say something, please? There's a lot of problems to this situation as far as I'm concerned. I don't see any problem with the ordinance we got right now, just keeping it like it is. I mean, it's simple and quick, but it's a lot of problems: enforcements, sanitations, noises. Who's going to enforce it? That's going to be all kinds of problems. And I just like the last issue we were talking about, there's all kinds of problems. Do we really want to get involved in these problems? I understand there's certain people that love chickens, but I don't think it's true in this town.
What we have to do as a board is kind of think of the overall community and impacts and benefits to the overall community. And I guess in this case, what we need to look at is, changing our ordinance to allow, more flexibility with raising livestock. We've got to ask ourselves, if we allow that, are we doing more harm than good, or more good than harm? Are we chasing people? Are people going to avoid Spencer or leave Spencer because we don't allow chickens, or vice versa, right? Are they not going to want to come here? Are they going to want to leave because we've suddenly allowed chickens and they can't stand being near them?
I think the people who've asked me about it are people who have come here from other areas where they were permitted. And, for instance, there was one person in particular that I am aware of who had pet chickens, and it kind of broke her heart to have to give them up when she came here. So,
Anecdotally, I did have one lady who wanted to move here, had a realtor looking for a lot that would allow chickens. I explained the ordinance to them. They looked at a half a dozen lots within the municipal limits and have settled on a lot out on Hollywood. Well, I guess it's 3rd Street. No, it's Hollywood about that. Hollywood and Grove Ferry Road. Found an 11-acre property out there. She did all that searching because she wanted to move to this area, but she wanted to have those chickens and wanted to have livestock. It wasn't just chickens.
And again, that's why we've zoned that area the way we have to allow those things.
Well, that's in our ETJ. Our ordinance, this particular ordinance doesn't apply to
Yeah.
anything in the
Yeah.
ETJ.
Right.
So in the ETJ, people can have them.
Right.
So
Do the towns that do they, it looks like basically lot-based and, number of birds or animal-based regulations? Do they regulate the type of structure or run? I mean, 5 foot per, I mean, do they do that type of thing, materials?
the Chapel Hill ordinance requires that chickens be kept in what they call a chicken run. So they're actually inside all the time. The Concord regulation allows them to be out in an enclosed yard during the day, but they have to be in the coop at night. So all the ordinances are slightly different. The Chapel Hill one was the most restrictive as far as the type of enclosure. Raleigh was a close second to that as far as what they required.
Gotcha.
And like I say, up there it's a competition, so everybody wants to have the best coop.
I mean, my thought, and the 5 constituents that I live at home with, they've encouraged me to not be chicken and to not duck this. But
Don't anger them.
I mean, my thought is I totally get Alderman Miller's concern. I do think wide open, let them free range and run around, that would be insane. That would be a nightmare. But I do think something that would allow a small number of chickens, depending on the lots. Most of us have smaller lots, much smaller lots than even an acre. As long as it's in an enclosure, and that unfortunately is a regulation in itself because those enclosures are not cheap. So if you decide to do this, you're making an investment, right? So I mean, it's not a willy-nilly, let's get some chickens from Tractor Supply and see what happens. I mean, it's something, I mean, I think that with your permitting process would keep it down to a few people, and then if that goes well, then we can talk about expanding it. I know we basically more or less foreclose it entirely now. I don't know that's right either. I mean, I think there is a balance. That's just my thought. I mean, I think if even if it's fairly restrictive, there's a way.
Y'all don't have to convince me. I'm your staff.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm just saying. Chicken fries.
I mean.
I would be really interested to see what you could do with authorization to further develop and look into this, because I think, whereas I really hear what you've said, Mr. Miller, I do think we have residents who are interested in this. And while as I will always make a joke of something, which is not being flippant, it's just my personality. Can't fix it now, I'm too old for that. I think that there are some people who will be maybe interested in having a few birds because we are in hard economic times, because eggs are expensive at the grocery store, because frankly, we all know people who we wish to God they wouldn't have got that dog because they treat it terribly. I mean, somebody's yappy dog that they never bring in the house is going to be way more disturbing to a neighbor than a couple of chickens in a coop kept by a responsible resident who is interested in this, who comes in to get a permit, who does their research, who has come to the town to inquire about changing an ordinance to be able to do this. And so I think it would behoove us, if we've had people who have inquired about this, to look into it further for them, and I'm willing to do that.
One thing I'm wondering is if there's a way to consider some type of pilot program where you were to take applications for a limited number of people, run it for a year or whatever it is, see how it goes, get community and neighbor input as to how it goes as well. I mean, I think it would be interesting to see if it is something that would fly in this community or not.
Chickens don't fly.
See if it has wings.
More like glide.
Yeah.
The only problem I would see with that is that if, let's say we open it up to the first dozen that apply, and they each go out and spend $3,000 on a fancy chicken coop, and at the end of the year we say, hey, it didn't work, sorry.
Yeah.
You lost your $3,000.
Well, it's a pilot program.
Right.
You don't have to spend
that's
$3,000.
a risk that if people are willing, that interested in it, they'd be willing to take that risk.
And they would
They
be
could always
sure
sell it on Facebook Marketplace.
There you go.
I think it'd be interesting to explore that a little further. Steve, I'm kind of with you. Like, my thought is, we've got an ordinance. It works.
We're not saying no.
Right.
We've got,
Right.
it's worked all these years. I'm not against modification or possibly looking into solutions, but a majority of people in Spencer is not for this.
Right. And I want to reach out to, that's the other thing is, like, we really need community input. All we've heard are folks that have expressed an interest in it. Well, we haven't heard of the people that aren't interested, and I know they're out there, and I'd rather them tell us here than on social media that they're not interested in it. So I think that type of input is stuff that we need from folks. The other thing I want to point out that we haven't discussed, and just a point, is chickens, small livestock like that, they attract predators, and not just feral cats. You're going to see a rise in coyotes. You're going to see a rise in foxes when you invite chickens into your community. And so with as much surrounding forest land that we have with Standback Forest, some of the surrounding game land and things like that, those animals will start to come into our area a little more. And the reality is that's not something we want to encounter when we're on a walk in town or on a walk in Standback Forest, although I've seen plenty of coyotes run across 17th Street. So just something for us to keep in mind.
So I'm looking for consensus. Do we go forward?
Forward, what do you want Mr. Blunt and staff to do?
I'd like to continue the conversation. I don't think there's any harm in getting more information, more feedback from the community.
Yeah, I agree on that.
I agree with that too.
I think so. And if we can get something and 50 people show up and say it's the worst idea ever, we can just not do it.
I'd just like to see 50 faces. That'd be great.
Just not with pitchforks and torches.
Honestly, I'd take it to see 50 people at one of these meetings.
Yeah. I'd also be interested to know if anybody else around, any other communities, had done some type of pilot program or something. It'd be interesting to see.
Okay. We'll look into that.
Thank you, sir.
If I get a brown goat, anyone driving by will just think it's Murphy. Who's gonna know? Who's gonna know if it's a goat or a chocolate Labrador?
All right. Next item is to receive a presentation on the possible annexation of 8 residential lots on Lincoln Avenue. This is the presentation Mr. Blunt's been alluding to earlier tonight.
This one came up surprisingly, not in context of the 40-foot road right-of-ways, but as a water line extension. And you might remember that we have an agreement with Salisbury-Rowan Utilities that anytime a water main is extended in our ETJ, the town of Spencer has to approve it. We've used that in the past couple of years to gently twist arms and request that these large industrial sites agree to voluntary annexation into our town. They needed water, we annexed them. It will mean future property tax revenue for us. So when I got a call from a property owner of that little blue strip of properties right there, and he was asking me, he said, SRU says I have to get a letter from you to approve the upsizing and extension of a water line to these lots. And the lots were already platted out. It wasn't a new subdivision. It was on a road. It was slightly in our ETJ. You see the dotted line there that shows where our municipal limits are. And this is, for those that aren't familiar, 3rd Street, go out before you get to Grants Creek, and on your left is the Dorset Chapel, and the road right past that is Lincoln Avenue. There are a couple occupied lots up front. It's a little hard to see at that scale, but you can see a few houses there at the front part of this. But the back part of it has one house built, one house that looks like it's about to fall down. But those 8 lots, and I found out later that 2 of the lots on the other side of the road have been bought by a contractor / developer out of Charlotte, and is doing exactly what we have suggested on those lots over off Hawkins Loop Road. they've accumulated all the lots so they can spread the cost of development across numerous lots. And therefore, the cost of extending that water main is something they can afford to do. Makes these lots developable. As I was about to sign a letter and send it to SRU saying, yay, go ahead and expand that, we're glad for them to develop the lots. It finally dawned on me the reason SRU had sent them to us is that we could ask that they annex these properties into the town of Spencer to get that extension. These were platted in 1903, a long, long time ago. And when it was platted, just like these other plats I've shown you tonight, they had a 40-foot right-of-way for the road. There you finally get to see the actual 10 lots that are involved at this point. And he's having, although there's a water line that runs part of the way down there, it's too small, so they're having to take out the small line, put in a larger line. At about the left-hand end of that blue coloring, there's actually a fire hydrant on that road. So it has fire hydrant service to it. But it has a narrow road. There's a picture of Lincoln Avenue. The 40-foot right-of-way goes from about the telephone pole on the left to a little behind the fire hydrant on the right. And then past the church, it sort of narrows down to 14-foot, maybe 12-foot in some places, road that is an NCDOT maintained road. It's already in the NCDOT system. So there's no question of who's going to maintain it. NCDOT's, it's their road, they're going to maintain it. And before Anna set me on the right road to how to sell this project, I started looking to see what else we had in town that sort of met the same situation. There's 2nd Street with a 40-foot right-of-way, 45-foot maybe, can't read it. 45-foot right-of-way, 18 feet of pavement. There's Ann Street with a 40-foot right-of-way and 16 feet of pavement and a car parked on the street. So that gives you that example of can a fire truck get through there. And then I came to that conclusion after talking to Anna, the solution in isolation is not a solution at all. And I came back and redrew that slide because if we forced him to fix the road in front of the property he's developing, he would go from a nice road in front of those 10 lots and then drive 300 feet on a 14-foot wide road to where it expands up at the Dorset Chapel. I think Dorset actually expanded it themselves so they could get cars in and out of their parking lot easier. The property owned between the blue part and Hollywood is owned by a handful of different property owners. I've got no way to force them to participate in a development ordinance. So does it make sense to, in this case, it's not even a matter of forcing him to build a road. What we would be saying is, we're not going to agree to let you improve your water system. We have a right as a town with our agreement with SRU to say no. And then those lots couldn't be built on. And they would just sit there forever and ever. So there's some options that are open to you tonight to give us direction on which way to go. And I will tell you that I mentioned to the developer that I would be presenting this to you tonight. He's in a hurry to get this done. He wants to get approval to SRU so they can start their work on the water line. So he has actually already submitted a petition for annexation. He's ready to move ahead. He has no hesitation at all about being annexed in. This is not a presentation on the annexation itself. This is a presentation on whether to grant him the right to upgrade that water line. But along with it, you will have the option of approving or disapproving an annexation request. If you do approve an annexation request, then it becomes our property. We provide services to it. And it comes back to those questions of accessibility. And as you saw in the other presentation, you need a 12-foot road to get a fire engine in. You need 20 foot of space to open the fire engine up and use it. And that road, while it technically is 12 feet wide, and technically has enough shoulder so that you could have 20 feet. It doesn't meet our current standards, doesn't meet DOT's current standards. But they're not asking us whether they can build a road. The road's already there. The lots are lots of record since 1903. So the question is, do we want to hold up this project by refusing the right to extend the water line over the fact that he doesn't have adequate road for his lots? Or do we want to approve the SRU improvement to the water lines and then consider the annexation on its own merits? Does the revenue created by probably $300,000 houses on 10 lots at $3 million worth of tax base, 10 new families, that would be about 30 new people to our population, et cetera, et cetera. Also becomes a domino effect, and this area has a lot of these undeveloped properties or not fully developed properties. A lot of them on the other side of Hollywood that could catch on and have the same process done to them. So I bring it to you because although SRU gives the town authority, in the past I've come to you with these great big projects that made super sense to approve the SRU water extensions in return for annexation. This one, you'll have to tell me whether it makes sense. And the making sense is not the normal question of does the revenue meet the cost of services. It's do we want to annex an area that has a substandard road in it with probably no good solutions to bring it up to standards. That's my situation. Both of these, the chickens and the annexation, are issues that I'm bringing to you without a solution. I'm coming to you with questions on how you want us to proceed.
So we'll open it up to the board. I guess I've got a couple questions relative to it and kind of maybe a few statements too. Yeah, one thing I want to point out is that area of our ETJ for potential future residential expansion and future annexation, voluntary annexation. I mean, that's been kind of part of the vision in that area, and now we're actually seeing it come to fruition, maybe a little sooner than we thought. I view this case a little bit differently than the area in Hawkinstown, because in those cases you've got a right of way but no road. And so what we're saying is if you build a new road, here's the standard that we want you to build it to. This, you've already got parcels, you've already got a road in place. I think it'd be tough for us to say, I think it'd be tough for us to say, no, you can't have a water line extension and develop these. I think the bigger question comes back to, is it something that we want to consider annexing in when they apply? You know, do we want to put that stipulation of you have to apply for annexation if we're allowing you to extend water? You know, those are the questions we have to ask ourselves. Yes, it's a substandard road according to our current development ordinance, but the road is there. The road is just like every other road in the area. That area is currently served by emergency vehicles. That road currently is served by emergency vehicles. I mean, it'd be tough for us to go in and require that area to be upgraded.
I'm running my recorder here because I want to go back to that other presentation and
it's different.
Turn the comments.
It's different. I mean, you got two different cases, and I think what we're looking at is with what you proposed earlier with our development ordinance changes, we're trying to use that to solve some very different cases. And I think you've proven a point that each individual case is going to be different. And to be able to have the flexibility for the zoning administrator to be able to have that flexibility is important. I would further say that it's probably important that the board have a say in those types of decisions too. Obviously the annexation piece we would, but even in approval of subdivisions like that where we have these varying road condition right away or existing road conditions. The other question I've got, and we'll open it up for the board, but the question I've got relates to satellite annexation. if we start getting these requests, we start getting these piecemeal satellite annexations, which can be an issue for us.
Actually, we're exempted from the 10% cap on satellite annexation by state statute, and by doing the stair-step annexations that we've done, we've actually brought in some of the areas that were satellite and are now contiguous. So I don't think that'll be a problem. This one, the thing that's radically different about this from the other presentation is there's no debate over who's going to do the maintenance on the road. Right. DOT is their road.
Is DOT going to give driveway permits?
DOT doesn't give permits for residential driveways.
Okay.
They make suggestions on where they should go, but they don't approve
Okay.
it or not.
Now, if we go the annexation route, that road becomes ours or stays with DOT?
Stays DOT.
Okay. See, I mean, I think I'm with the mayor. This road's already existing. It's, sins of the fathers. It's a sin already committed. It's already done. And there's emergency vehicles already up and down this road, even in a limited capacity. And DOT already has it. So substandard or not, it's their baby.
Let me ask you a question then, and I don't mean to interrupt you, I'm sorry,
Sure.
but sins of the father on that other stuff, they granted a 40-foot right-of-way. And it's really the county that granted that 40-foot right-of-way back in 1950 for the Hawkinstown or whatever.
Thanks, Jay.
So,
Steve used to be the chair.
In 1950, right?
yeah, 1950.
I've never been the chair.
Right out of the cradle into the chairs. So it's just a thought. I'm not trying to argue that point, but just keep in mind that the first was sort of a hypothetical almost of what might happen in the future, and let's help these people if we can. This is the concrete example of that, and the only difference is that there's already a road on this one. It's on a 40-foot right-of-way, just like the other ones. Yeah. The 40-foot right-of-way offers all the same problems that the other one does. Yeah. The only difference is solving that who's going to maintain the road issue. The road's already there.
Yeah.
And the other issue, somebody will build the road. It will have to be built to our standards. So even in that previous example, it's not who builds a road and what standard it's built to, it's who maintains it.
All right, so, I mean, hypothetically, you got two vacant lots side by side on some of these existing roads we already maintain that somebody wants to build on. We're not going to deny a building permit.
Well, I live and die by that book that y'all approved called the Development Ordinance. The Development Ordinance says, one of the things it says is that your lot has to have access to a public road.
Yeah.
So on 2nd Street and Grant Street and Ann Street and all these substandard roads that we've got, it's got access to a public road. If the lot's big enough and they've got water and sewer and they can meet the setback requirements, I have no choice but to give them a zoning.
Well, how does this not have, I mean, it has access to a public road.
The only thing that triggered this one is the extension of the water line.
Right.
So it's
I
not
see
a matter,
that as two separate
it's
issues.
not a matter of issuing the zoning permits. They've got access to the road.
Right.
I would issue zoning permits tomorrow if they came in and asked for them. But you could deny them the right to have water because of our agreement with SRU. And we only trigger that, and you were very right in the fact that we're sort of planning our future residential growth in this direction, and it won't be the 1 and 2 lot things that does that. It'll be the 10 lot developments that triggers that, and the 20 and the 141 lot Hawkins Meadows division.
So I'm going to share a personal philosophical belief that I have, and it has to do with my career and my focus on water and wastewater. No person should be deprived of the right to water. So, I mean, I think if that's the question, my opinion is how could we not approve the water line extension? They're paying for it. They're willing to, they're just asking for access to clean, potable water.
Totally agree with you. And everything you just said, but it's your choice to make, not mine. Because
it's actually not my choice.
It's your board's
It's their choice.
Yeah. You're agreeing with
But I know
SRU.
if it was my choice, I know where I would stand on that.
Your agreement with SRU gives you the authority and the duty to make that decision. And when there's no question about it, to the Johnson development and the truck stop and things like that, it just made good sense. And in some of those cases, it wasn't even an extension of the water line, it was just connection to it. But in this case, it's an extension, and I have to ask you, number one, do you want to grant them permission? I agree you should. Number two, I'll come back to you next month and say, do you want to annex this property?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should stick with utilizing our right based on our agreement with SRU to require them to petition for voluntary annexation and to give us the opportunity to weigh the pros and the cons when it comes to cost of service and those sorts of things. I mean, that's the direction that I would recommend, is that the board, approve the water line extension with the condition for the voluntary annexation, because we're allowing the water line extension. And then we have the right to say yes or no to the annexation down the road. What are the board's thoughts or questions on that? Mr. Miller?
Is that a form of motion by you?
No.
Sounds like it.
No, I'm asking your input. Y'all have to make this decision. And I hope I don't have to break a tie.
I agree with everything you've said as far as that goes. You can't deny these people a right for water. So let's go with the possibility of letting them let the city of Salisbury provide the water for this development, for these 8 residential lots, and see where it goes from here, with the possibility of annexing it in.
I see some heads nodding.
Yeah.
Do you need a formal motion to approve the water line
I would
extension?
prefer one, yes, sir.
Okay.
I'll make the motion.
All right.
I just did it.
There's a motion from Mr. Miller for approval of the water line extension for this subdivision.
Second.
And annexation, do we need to address that?
Not yet.
A slight correction, it's not a subdivision, it's just a water line
Okay.
extension.
Right.
And the annexation will come to you in the future.
Yeah.
Go ahead and vote on that, and then I'll have a closing
Okay.
comment.
And then there's a second by Ms. Moody. Any further discussion?
Just one question, how much of the road is, what's the distance between the two? Where it joins and where this new road would be? How much distance is there in there?
Well, can you get me back to that presentation? I'm asleep. It's about okay, so that black line at Hollywood is about 100 feet long, and then the skinnier black line is about 300 feet long.
300 feet.
And then there's about 300 feet of road in front of those lots that they're proposing development on. Okay. And they are lots of record, so it's not a subdivision.
Right.
How big are the lots?
I rode out there today, and they're showing us 50-foot lots, and they're zoned RMST, so they meet the standards. But boy, it looks skinny when you drive down that road. And
I just question whether they're big enough for
on RMST, 47-foot road frontage is what's required. So yeah, they meet we're seeing a lot of those houses built, and I'm sure that's what's going to be built on these 2-story small.
Yeah, two-story narrow, deeper houses.
Okay, thank you.
But is there sewer out there, or are they going to have to provide?
Sewer runs right behind the houses.
Oh, does it?
That backs up to the floodplain of Grants Creek. So there's an outfall that runs down there.
Yeah, the wastewater plant's not far from there.
Yeah.
So they would provide, the city of Salisbury would provide sewer for them as far as
they'll connect to that line. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor? All right. All opposed? And that's approved unanimously. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
All right. We can take a 5-minute recess.
That's what I was just
I am going to ask, do you have a planning report, or have you delivered it?
Please.
You have my report. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, let's take a 5-minute recess, and we'll reconvene here actually, let's make it 6. We'll reconvene at 8:10. I did that for Steve. He hates when you do it more than once. We're gonna get started back.
Robert's rule says you do it once.
That's right.
And I know we
That
don't,
wasn't official. That was just getting people's
and I
attention.
know that we don't strictly abide by Robert's rules.
Okay, board, are we ready? Mike, Bentley? All right, we are back from recess and we'll move into our departmental reports. Mr. Blunt, I think you indicated you have, we have your planning department report. Anything else you want to add?
No.
All right, board, questions on the planning department report for the month? Board
No,
questions?
good job.
Yeah, thanks for all your work on all of the stuff tonight. All right, next is our code enforcement report.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Evening.
I won't stand here as long as Steve did. I promise.
It's tough to beat.
You have the monthly code enforcement report. Very busy, so that is good. I have our new code officer with us. He'll stand up. Everybody can see who the new code officer is. Preston Eagle. He's doing a very good job. So we're very fortunate to have him. We wanted to introduce him briefly tonight, and tell you he's working hard. He's hit the ground running. So if you noticed in the monthly report, we had 63 cases for the month of May. Had to quickly flip back. April was 31, March was 37. So we've nearly doubled output in your first 3 or 4 weeks, really. We about doubled output. So we're trying to work on a strategic plan to tackle some of the problem areas. So we've identified 10 target properties within the town that are either our worst ones that have multiple violations or ones that have had violations before and they just keep coming back. So we're going to try to target the 10 initially. Once we work with the property owners to get those resolved, then we're going to move down the list. We're going to target 10 more. Hate to use the term target, but it is target because we've got neighbors that are complaining about them, and these are not properties with one single violation. They've got multiples. So that's what we're working towards right now. Everything else will kind of maintain the same direction that we had currently. We're really, summertime, it's going to be all high grass for the most part, mixed in with a little bit of junk, junk on the front porch and some of the other minor violations. And then, once winter comes around and our grass goes down, then we'll kind of shift over to something a little more aggressive on minimum housing and dilapidated structures and whatnot. But I can try to answer any question you may have about the monthly code enforcement report.
All right. First, welcome aboard. Thanks for taking on the role. We know you got your work cut out for you, but thanks for serving. Board, questions on code enforcement? All right. Thank you, sir. Next, we'll move to the police department report.
All righty. The easy one for me, busy month. If you notice, our numbers keep going up, so that's I give that credit to the officers for their hard, diligent work out there. For the month of May, we had 3,082 events. We're continuing all of our proactive work, and then obviously our ACE team is officially released now from working a patrol schedule, so they're making their own schedule, and we're hitting our target times. I won't share that in public, but we're hitting our target times where they need to be working to be the most productive. And they are encountering the type individuals that we knew they would be. So they're doing a very good job, and we're very happy with the direction we're going there. But I will answer any questions you may have on the PD report.
Great. Thank you, board. Questions on the police department? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Stay safe out there.
Nice.
I saw your ghost vehicle somewhere. I don't remember now where it was hidden.
Yeah. All right. Fire department, Chief Laney.
Mayor and board, how are you this afternoon?
Good.
You have my prepared report before you, and I'll answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. Board, questions on the fire department?
Have you filled camp applications already?
It closes on the 15th, and I think we've only received 7 or 8 thus far. So we still have, let's just say 8 positions open. So not saying that I want 100, but I'm not going to turn anybody away. So if children would like to attend, they are more than willing to.
And your target is like 15?
15.
Yeah, okay. I think we definitely love to see it filled, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you again for doing that.
Most
It's a
definitely.
very beneficial service to the youth in our community. Other questions?
Fire truck show.
Yes, yeah, a week from this coming Saturday, at the Transportation Museum. Come out, see all the fire trucks, vote for us. Not that we're partial, but.
We are.
The one thing I will add, our 3 firefighters started yesterday. I'll have them here next month to introduce them. We're still vacant 1 engineer position, so.
It's awesome though, 5 out of 6.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are you still having problem finding that one spot?
We are, yes, sir.
Okay.
We've had, I don't know, 10, 12 applicants.
Yeah.
Some of them are just not remotely qualified. We had an internal applicant that said he was interested and then backed out about a week ago. And I probably had 7, I would say probably out of the 12 that were no call, no shows for their agility test. So.
Are you interested, Steve?
No, I think so. I think I've done my share of work around. Nope.
Okay. Any other questions for you? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Stay safe. Mr. Taylor, Public Works.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board.
Good evening.
Just a few notes. The Independence Day falls on a Thursday this year, so we will be doing, it will be no change in garbage schedule, but bulkies will be picked up on Friday that week. That's the only changes that we have for those. We did have a stormwater road repair over on 6th Street that was completed today. Actually, the patch was completed today, so that is taken care of. We also have quite a bit of sidewalk repaired last month to get it in before the end of the year. So both of those were POW bill expenditures that were budgeted for. Duke Energy still continues to trim power lines. We're getting some complaints from neighbors, that kind of stuff. We do have numbers to pass along to Duke Energy, and they will come out and assess. So if anyone has any complaints or anything like that, let us know. It could be Town Hall, Peter, myself. We do have the numbers and the resources. We can get them in touch with somebody.
I noticed where Duke Energy cut some of the tree limbs during that fire the other 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. They cut some stuff, but it's still hanging up there, and there's some dead limbs. Now, today I had a door hanger to say that they were going to be cutting some more. So on my property, I don't know exactly what, but
Okay.
they
will be moving up Charles Street. I know that's coming. I didn't know the specifics, but they're going all the way out 3rd Street, all the way out to Ellis Crossroads, I believe is the area they'll be working in. So it's very possible that they will be in that area. If they don't, let me know when they're in that area, and I will take them over and show them, and we'll make sure we get them taken care of.
it's just
if
that
it's on the line.
the dead stuff's hanging up there, and
Okay.
and it just needs not to be. And I don't want to take a chance on trying to knock it down.
I understand.
If there's power lines there, I don't want to mess with it.
No, I understand that totally. So yeah, if they don't get it when they come through, let me know, and I'll get in touch with this gentleman, and we'll schedule it to get it done, because he's done some areas in town that really weren't on the schedule, but he saw as we were out, he did that block at the park that was not originally on the schedule. So there are some areas that he's got leeway. He can get it while they're here. In any areas y'all see, just let me know, and we'll get it reported to him. So, and the last thing I'll mention, other than what's in my normal report, is the CCAP. I have been in touch with Chris Loop. He is going to file for an extension again for me. Probably this one will be a 6-month extension on the basis that we don't have our permits. So, and that's his basis. He says, we filed for permit 6 months ago. We still don't have a permit. At least you can do is give us another 6 months. Now, I will say that the estimate that I have received is a lot more than what that grant is. So I have proposed for the work that they're going to do. So I have mentioned that to Brandon and them to see if we can use some of the other grant money to supplement, or what other options there may be out there for us to get some more money to do. The specific amount of the CCAP has to be for the creek restoration. Cannot be for the logging, the benching, none of that. It has to be for the stream restoration. So it's not like I can do a portion and do the clearing and then come back and then, that has to be used for that. So we'll have to, so we're trying to be a little bit ingenuitive about this and see how we can work the money. So I'll have some more definite answers later. Brandon's still checking on his side, and maybe another grant opportunity. I don't know. We'll just have to see how it plays out. But other than that, we're just still hanging tight for permits and waiting for the other estimates to come in. I hope they come in lower, but from the first one I got, possibly not. So we'll just have to see.
Those permits are federal permits, is that right?
They're coming from the Army Corps of Engineers.
401, 404.
So can we go back to them and say, you have to give us more money since you've held us up?
Yeah, we can say that.
We can say that.
Well,
We can say that, but it's probably not going to work out too well.
Well, I mean, it's the same as if you don't
trying.
ask.
We can try. We can try. So for sure.
It's your fault we haven't done this yet.
That's right.
That's right.
Construction costs have gone up because of
Okay.
their delay. Yeah, I like that.
I like that. We can try that
Who
and
knows?
see what it goes. Exactly.
I don't know.
And just to mention, remember the fireworks will be the 29th. We'll be blocking off the parking lot, and there'll be some other things going on, but they will be held on the 29th. And I'll answer any questions that you may have.
I got a question. It's on garbage.
Okay.
Driving through town, I still see people don't know how to put their garbage cans on the streets. Are we trying to educate these people? How are we trying to do that?
With hangers on the cans themselves. We correct it, we put it in the right place, and then we put hangers on the cans.
Does it seem to be working at all?
Yes, for a week or so. Maybe we get 2 weeks out of it, and then they go right back to the way it was.
Can we just not pick the garbage up?
And that's where we're headed to.
Okay.
That will be our next step, and that will be instituted at the same time we go back to the 4-day route.
Okay.
Which I'm holding back a little bit because my normal driver's not here.
Right.
He'll be back, I think it's the 17th of the month. So by the 1st of July, we'll be going to that route.
Okay.
And then yes, that will be the answer. Now, it's going to be a lot of phone calls.
But that's what it needs to be done.
And we got to document it. That's the other side of the coin,
Okay.
is the guys have got to document it on the truck, saying, this wasn't picked up, and then that way when they call, then I know, and we've got evidence, you know what I mean, to where we can stand behind that.
That's
but
fine.
that's the next step.
Okay.
So to clarify, if we haven't gotten a hanger, then we haven't messed up anything.
You have done everything correct. Yeah, if you're not getting the hangers, then
That
you're
would
doing
be
everything
embarrassing.
correctly.
If I have been messing up this whole
Right.
time.
And we have some that will just be a little out of place, or maybe that week they put it under a power line. No, we're not nitpicking people. As far as I go, the driver will
You
get
should
out.
be
he'll move.
nitpicking me, though. That'd be embarrassing if I was doing it wrong. You would be texting me, right?
But if you're getting a note, and especially if you're getting it multiple times, then that would be the reason. And it's marked clearly on there what the violation was, whether it was not far enough in the street, if it's not. And we've got some areas that the power lines are really low. So we've actually marked with paint where they need to put that can, because we've been looking, trying to find a specific spot. Now he has worked out a lot of the logistics, as far as we've got very few now that we're having to get with the other truck, and most of that's the alleys in town. And there's really not much of a solution for those, but it takes like 30 minutes, to pick those up. Not a big deal.
I think the paint's been really helpful. I've seen a couple people. I was driving by this morning, a few houses that have a paint spot, and their can was right there, and I was like, "That's a great solution."
That it seems to, and if that seems to be, we actually have a stencil that we can use which makes it more uniform through town. We just don't want to have to mark everyone's house. So
A lot of paint.
that's a lot of paint, a lot of time.
Well, and I think there's still people that don't recognize that everything has to be in the garbage can and the lid closed. Because I
Right,
see.
and they get a note as well,
Yeah.
And that specific, and when we see that, then, you know, we will go back to what we were talking about earlier. It just will not be picked up.
Yeah.
It's not in a can. And we mark on there, you know, extra cans are available. And we've had a lot of people purchase second cans. I mean, I'm not saying we haven't, because we have. But there are still some, cardboard is the biggest thing. And we just write on there, I mean, there's a way to recycle cardboard in town. You can bring it, you know, to either location and drop it off. So we're trying to educate, but it's an uphill battle at this point. So we'll keep plunging away.
Another question. Second Street, we talked about that cave-in and everything else.
Mhm.
I think you said you had two bids.
Mhm.
Have you got a third bid yet? Or
No, I do not have a third.
are you gonna try to get a third, or?
Oh, yes, at the price that it came in at, and I'm not gonna mention what that is because
Okay.
it's, it will have to go to a sealed bid.
Okay,
Mhm.
it will.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep,
And
so,
one other thing, all these yellow lines up here on Main Street, is that for the street paving that we're doing?
I'm not really sure, it's gas.
It's gas,
They
yeah.
mark the gas lines.
But they mark it all
but
over.
I wouldn't think that would be for the street repaving, but there again, they are gonna do some grinding. So it's very possible that they are marking maybe the cutoffs, you know, that kind of stuff, I'm not sure.
You know, they just make a mess. I mean, these people that spray these lines, they spray it and they don't think about anybody.
Mhm. And there's a way on your locate them, say, do not spray paint on sidewalk.
I noticed they
I
put
do it on
flags in.
driveways all the time, do not paint on driveways or
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that, but yes, I agree.
Okay, thank
I
you.
agree. Okay,
Anything else?
all right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Finance report.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You guys have any questions about the, report that was given to you? No, I have been working with the department heads to kind of clean up the negative account balances within their budgets. The ones that I have to do now, that I still have left to do is police and administration, but everything else is pretty much cleaned up, so. Next week, we have the auditors here for to begin our field work for the FY24 audit. So, but other than that, you have any questions?
Board, any questions?
Anything that should jump out at us, Heather, that might not to someone who's not a finance expert?
No, I try to go through and highlight, things that are alarming to me. Just, the overages in the budgets in the line items are the biggest thing. I know that, as far as the general fund, I haven't done, some of the transfers. So at the end of the general fund on page 10, you'll see where, the activity and the current balances with your revenues and expenses, they look kind of off, and it's just because I haven't done the transfers there. So, but everything else looks good to me. So, and I've been working with John on the year-end stuff, so he's teaching me quite a bit with and answering some questions that I have with things. So.
I appreciate you highlighting those things because that's
It's really helpful.
very, very good idea.
All right.
Any other questions?
This is a question about the next year's budget.
Mhm.
Will the taxes, the taxes for the vehicles, will that be collected through the county tax? How is that? Would that be just an add-on to our county tax bill?
No, it will get collected the same as currently when you renew a license plate.
Oh, okay.
The
So
property tax
it'll go through the
is
state
on
then.
there ad valorem, so the additional $10 will get added to that.
Okay, okay. And this, the charges that the Rowan County charges us for collecting taxes, what is that?
So they charge us a 5%, not what it was whenever to collect our taxes.
I think it's closer to 1%.
Maybe it's 1.5. I'm sorry. it was
Which is
5 for the
increasing there's been a multi-year plan to get it. I forget where it was, but it's increasing a little bit each year to arrive at a certain number.
I don't remember what that number is, but I can look at it and tell you. Find out.
But basically, it's us paying for their staff to do the tax collection process for us.
Maybe it was 5% for the garbage collection. I think you're right. It's 1.5% for the taxes.
And honestly, that's 24,000 for what they do. That's a deal. That's a deal for us.
That's for sure.
Okay. Any other questions? Thanks for all your work. I know it's a busy time of year for you.
Thank you. Thanks, Heather.
All right. Anna, our library report.
Yes. So this past May, instead of the program that Beverly's kind of been doing, our librarian, she ended up having a New York Times bestseller, Patty Callahan Henry. She came and spoke about her journey to becoming a writer and about some of her books. And Ms. McCraw mentioned a few places. Food Lion donated some things, and then she got some items from Tea for Two, and there are volunteers who made some of the cupcakes and sandwiches. And she also wanted to specifically thank people who loaned her tablecloths and china and all those other materials for the formal tea. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Board questions on the library? Great. All right. Thank you.
I was able to attend that tea, and it was really nice.
Yeah.
The author was very informative, interesting.
Well, thank you, Anna, and thank you, Ms. McCraw, for all that she does for our library.
I do think that was a sold out.
It was.
Yes, they had
great.
the library turn some people away.
I got in because somebody canceled, because I was on the wait list.
All right, we'll move to the town manager report, Mr. Franzese.
Well, I have a special treat for you. I'm going to get up like Steve and give you a slideshow.
Oh my God.
Just kidding. But I do have a multimedia. I do have a multimedia presentation. It's a video, and so I'm not going to get up, but I will let it do the talking for me. And this is the video that Mayor Williams was also in, as well as Jason Walzer, and it has to do with how we have used our ARPA funding here in Spencer, and it's something that the North Carolina Pandemic Recovery Office, NC-PRO, which is a part of our state government, as well as the League of Municipalities, came together to highlight Spencer. They called and said, we've heard some good things about Spencer and we'd like to highlight you. And I said, sounds great. And so there is a written article that the League has published and this video that the NC-PRO has put together. It's really well done and lets us tell our story a little bit. So I thought that would be great for, it's pretty short, just a few minutes, and y'all could take a look.
Nominated for an Academy Award?
We'll see what happens.
I think so.
Just like this.
Even on this cloudy spring day, Spencer's future is bright.
It was exciting, this kind of once in a generation investment opportunity.
This Rowan County town, once home to the bustling Southern Railway Spencer shops, now the North Carolina Transportation Museum, received just over $1 million from the American Rescue Plan Act. It included federal grants to help towns and cities recover from COVID-19 and build more resilient communities.
Well, we talked about it locally, and we worked with our partners at Central Carolina Regional Council. They helped us with the planning process.
Town manager Peter Franzese says they used the grant to cover staff salaries, freeing up local funds for other projects, like buying the town's first automated side-loading garbage truck.
It's a lot safer, a lot more efficient as well.
A new fire truck to be delivered this fall.
It's a big undertaking for a small town to make that type of investment.
Funds freed up by the American Rescue Plan also allowed Spencer to complete the Yadkin River Park Trailhead, which opened in late 2023.
Spencer leadership has realized that They have to make Spencer a great place to live, to attract residents, and they're doing so.
Jason Walser is the executive director of the Blanche and Julian Robertson Family Foundation, one of the many organizations that donated to the park's construction.
Having quality green spaces and parks like this are vital to the long-term success of towns like Spencer.
Spencer's most transformative project will anchor the downtown, turning a portion of this parking lot back into a park.
It was actually a town center.
Demolished in the 60s for a shopping center.
But over the years, I think it's really had fallen into disrepair.
Mayor Jonathan Williams, sworn in just months before COVID-19 began.
Being able to have funding injected into our town that otherwise we would not have had, that's really made all the difference.
Plans for the new park promise to turn this into a local gathering place once again, and an open invitation for visitors to spend more time and money here.
I'm just appreciative for all the support we've gotten through the state, through the federal government, and especially through the North Carolina League and NC Pro to be able to take our visions and our dreams and really help us make them reality and move them forward.
Spencer's plans for growth and prosperity, full steam ahead.
So we are going to highlight that on our website as well, and in the upcoming newsletter, et cetera. So very pleased with how that turned out, and appreciate the attention that these statewide organizations are shining towards us.
Absolutely.
Central Line has just announced that they're opening up their awards program again for this year. That's the one that Joe applied to last year, and we got the recognition for the Yadkin River Trailhead. So, I don't know. Think about what we might.
Well, I've already thought, and I think this Yadkin River Small District Plan would be a great thing to submit for.
Yeah, great.
All right, anything else?
Just happy to answer any questions.
All right, board questions. All right. Thank you very much. We'll move to requests and comments from the mayor and board members. We'll start with Mr. Miller.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I think this past month we've been discussing the budget, and I know, speaking for myself and maybe all the people here all behind me, beside of me, we're not real happy with the tax increase, but unfortunately, this is part of the way things are. I wish we could really do a better job. I think we've done some work. We've cut some of the budget. I know at one time it was 7.5 cents at one time, and it's been reduced to 5.5 cents. We've done some. All I can say is if we'd have cut it anymore, we'd probably lost some people, some good quality people, and that's not what we want. We want to have a great staff that works for us. We're a small town. I think we're very blessed with outstanding individuals. So, believe it or not, we are trying to negotiate a good deal for everybody in Spencer. So, and at the same time, like Mrs. Gray's comments, if you have a comment, please let us know. Even if it's a bad comment or a good comment, let us know, because we appreciate it. If we're not doing something right, let us know. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Ms. Moody.
Tough act to follow. It's been an interesting first budgeting season for a new alder person, but I've really enjoyed the process and getting to learn from my board members. I've really appreciated everyone who could make it out to the meetings, who has emailed. And I know there's a lot of people who can't make it for various reasons, who watch at home. So I just thank you for staying involved in any way that you can. And I'm just going to repeat Mr. Miller's request of we like feedback. And also just understanding that, requisites to be on this board are to be a resident and a taxpayer and a voter in this community as well. And so just to remind everyone that we not only want to look out for the best for the residents of Spencer, but that we are residents of Spencer who pay taxes and are residents and property owners. So we will be going through this and walking through this with everyone. And so and just understanding that tax increases are hard, but it's an investment in the community. It's an important investment in our first responders' safety and the safety of the people who live here, which I will go to the wall on how important that is. So, you know, I agree with you, Mr. Miller, that we really could not, there's just certain things you can't cut on, and we're not going to cut on PPE and appropriate pay for our first responders and a lot of other things. But it's been a great experience, and I just hope that everyone can trust that the best interest for everyone who lives here is at heart, and just putting out a really quality product for everyone who lives here. So I yield.
Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two things. First, we saw or mentioned, I think in the presentation, one of the presentations, we have the fireworks here in just a couple of weeks. I guess the third time we've had fireworks, fourth time. I still vividly reflect on maybe 2 or 3 years ago when I stayed on this side in the town instead of going over to the Transportation Museum, and was absolutely shocked at how many people were packed in about a 3-block area in Spencer. I think it's phenomenal. So tell your friends, tell your neighbors, put it on Facebook, put it on social media. We appreciate the Transportation Museum for holding this event. It's a critical event for Spencer in the middle of the summer, puts us in the limelight. I think it's great. So please come out. I think the second thing is the most exciting thing I've done on this board in, I guess, going on 4 years, 3.5 years, however long, is to vote tonight on that small area plan for the Yadkin River Park, or the Yadkin River District. That has the potential to do things for this town that I don't even think we realize, that probably only in 50 or 60 years, when our grandkids or great-grandkids look back and say, wow, they got something. I don't know if they got it all right, but they got that right. So Mr. Blunt, well done. Everyone who's helped you, well done. I know there's more than just you, but all the private entity folks, that is maybe my number one concern coming on the board, was that we have to make that happen. And I know, talking with town people here, the residents, with people who spend time and money here in Spencer, that has been on their minds for 15, 20 years, is what was going to happen or be done with that property. And so the fact that we voted on that tonight, I think, is an enormous step forward for our board and for our town. And I cannot be more excited or more proud that we did that tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Ms. Sledge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things I wanted to mention. I want to say to the Community Appearance Committee, the displays along the front of the building and down the street, as well as other areas of town, are really looking good. I happened to notice the most gorgeous calla lilies. And I hadn't even noticed those before, but they're really pretty. And so thank you all for doing that. I would like to mention there were 2 things that we had on our consent agenda today, grants for facade here in Spencer. And so I want to say thank you for the person who is doing the Spencer Deli for making a commitment to develop that property here, or to open that property here, and also to Pinocchio's for their plans to increase the dining area and a pizza oven in the back of their building. So thank you all for that commitment and that pledge to spend some money here to make it all better. The mayor mentioned Juneteenth. There's a celebration on this coming Saturday at the Bell Tower Green. Wait a minute, let me think now. Is that Bell Tower Green? Is that Juneteenth? Yes, that's Juneteenth.
Yeah, that's right.
Because there's another, the fire thing is on the 22nd, but at Bell Tower Green, all day long, there's a celebration for Juneteenth. So if you can come to that. Ms. Moody and I are planning to attend the Heritage Breakfast tomorrow morning in recognition of that Juneteenth
That's
week.
next Wednesday. That's 19th.
It's not tomorrow?
Mm-mm. It's next Wednesday. It's actually on.
It's a good thing you mentioned that.
Your morning's freed up tomorrow.
Next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
I mean, we can double check it after this meeting, but I'm pretty sure it's next Wednesday.
Right.
It's June 19th.
Okay. Well, I'll have to look at my calendar and see what's on for tomorrow morning then.
Sorry, Pat.
I'm still helping with a friend who had a stroke, and I'm still helping with her mother, and so my days and evenings are kind of crazy.
For the sake of anyone who's wondering and listening right now, I'm going to look this up for us.
I suspect you're right.
Pretty sure it's on the 19th.
That would make sense. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
First, I want to say it's good to be back after an absence. The last month, I lost my daughter, and it was a rough month, and the town really rallied around me, and I really appreciate that. Special big thanks to everybody up here in the town hall and all the workers who've extended sympathy. It's good to be back. I'm excited about all the good things that are going on. I love that video. That just made me feel wonderful. And I'm excited about the future that Spencer is heading towards. And I also want to remind you that we will be having Winterfest this year, first weekend of December, and Pat and I will be getting in touch with many of you to line up volunteers. So be marking your calendar for that. And you should be hearing from us probably late summer. Okay, so pick out what you want to do. Thank you.
They're going to be Friday, Saturday, Sunday this year.
Yeah, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, first weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and I think I speak for the board. We are glad to have you back. We know what a rough month or so it's been, and we've been there with you. So
I know, and I appreciate it.
Just a couple remarks. This Friday we have our quarterly Mayor's Roundtable in conjunction with the Government Affairs Committee meeting for the Rowan Chamber. That meeting is important because we get to highlight Northern Rowan County. Following that meeting, the Rowan Chamber and the Government Affairs Committee, they've really been helping to advocate for the Northern Rowan Connector projects in Spencer and East Spencer, related to some of the stuff we heard about tonight, trying to reactivate and redevelop the old finishing company site and promote economic growth and industrial development along Long Ferry Road, as well as a potential future interchange in East Spencer at McCandless Road. And so what we are doing on Friday is, after our government affairs meeting, they've invited elected legislators as well as staffers from state and federal level, as well as our county folks, to stay for a presentation. So we'll be able to share some on our Yadkin River District plan that we talked about tonight, and some of the industrial development potential. The developer for that area is actually going to be there and be able to present and answer questions. And then we will actually be taking a field trip to come to Spencer with those elected officials and touring some of the various locations related to the Northern Rowan Connector in Spencer, and then also in East Spencer. So super exciting day of show and tell that we're looking forward to very much. So I want to thank staff. I know Steve's been working on a presentation, and Peter and others for working with the chamber to help coordinate that field trip. So. And then the other thing, I guess I just want to echo some of the things that have been said about the budget. Obviously, this is my time on the board has been the toughest budget that we've had to work through, probably because it's the one budget where we've actually raised the tax rate. And I just want to make sure to reiterate, we haven't done that lightly. We've done that taking full consideration of impacts within our community to our residents, but as well as the impacts to our staff and to our operations. And so, you know, we've trimmed the fat. We've settled on what we need to provide the most basic of services that we can, but providing those basic services at the highest quality possible. And I think that's really, really important. And, you know, I think you made a good point. The budget increase impacts each of us up here as well, just like it impacts those in our community. And, you know, some of us, it's going to hit our pocketbooks more than others. And we recognize that that's the case. You know, it's going to hurt all of us in one way or the other. We'll have to give up some things. And, you know, I think we've recognized that. But what I want to say is, personally, knowing that sacrifice that we're going to have to make and that additional property tax, you know, for me, it's something that I believe in this town so much, and I believe in the vision of this board and the work that our staff is doing. And I see the trust and the opportunity, the vision that other people outside of this community see in us. And it's one of those things that I would put my money on that every single day to see where we're headed. So I think the key is hang on. It's going to be, you know, it's going to hurt for a year or so, but the hope is that we will entice some of that development we've been talking about, that we'll be able to drive that tax rate back down. The one way to lower property taxes is to have a larger tax base. And I think we saw that in the presentation that I gave on Thursday. We saw some of those larger communities where people are making more money, they're better jobs, better paying jobs, their houses are worth more, but they also have a lot of industry, a lot of commercial folks that are helping with that tax base. And that's really the one piece that we are missing in town. We're relying on all of our residents to support our town operations and our tax base. And what we need to be growing is that industrial base and that commercial base that will help offset some of that. So that's the goal. We're not doing it lightly. We're not doing it flippantly. We're doing it with a understanding our current needs, but also understanding what the future holds. So thank you all. Thanks staff for your time in preparing the budget. I know a lot of time went into it. And board, thank you all for the thoughtful input and consideration that you've made. I appreciate all that you've invested in the process. That's all I have. Is there a need to have executive session this evening? Okay. Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Howe. All in favor? All right. All opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you all.